There we go. Apparently, I am actually live. A little earlier than expected, but what can you do? These things happen. And I just now sit down on my ass, wait patiently for people to turn up, drink some fizzy mineral water, and when people do turn up, then I'll start, answering questions, doing tarot readings, because essentially that's what I've been doing for my preferred subject has been tarot and general associated weird stuff associated with that, and that's like what I became, and so therefore that's what I talk about. And this camera angle is like not doing me that much favors. If I could move to like there, and then I'll probably look a bit better if I sat there, or just a little to the left there. Yeah, that'll do. And it's just a question of chilling out and waiting to see what happens. Some will turn up earlier, some will turn up later. For other people, they won't turn up at all, and that's fine. It's just where people are at within their like lifetime, day, week, month, year, anniversary, lifetime, health and well-being, whatever. Or maybe they're all out dating someone because everyone's got themselves like new relationships over the past 24 hours. I mean, I don't know. Could be a wide variety of different reasons why people either do turn up or don't turn up. But either way, I've told people that this is going to be going live at 6. So in essentially about like 5 minutes, maybe I can expect more people to suddenly appear. But whatever happens, happens. But either way, for myself, it's just a chill out Friday night. And I'm just going to sit here and like be sociable with people. Hello, we have a viewer. We actually have a viewer, the first viewer of the day. I did promise to go live at 6, and it's now about 6 minutes to 6. So you're early, as indeed am I. It will take a bit of time for more people to come in, so I might as well just remind whoever's watching this on the replay of a bit about the basic history of tarot and where tarot came from. Initially, there was this gambling game. All right, the Chinese played it. It was played with banknotes. They didn't have cards in those days, but one day they invented cards, and hey presto, that became the thing. It was a gambling game, and it started spreading out from the east to the west. And through conflicts and trade and all the rest of that, and people added different symbols to it and different ideas for their cultures. And eventually it hit Europe, which is already Christianized under Constantine, I think. I could be slightly wrong. I don't know precisely where on the timeline that actually happened. But either way, Europe was Christianized, and all of a sudden they thought that the fifth suit, the Trump suit, should be containing the main story that was going on in Europe at the time. And the main story that was going on in Europe at the time was Catholicism. And so the imagery from the Triumph Procession became the Trump suit of the tarot. And the Triumph Procession was what they did after Christianization, because before Christianization, they would only demonstrate the spoils of war. And then after Christianization, they showed all kinds of lovely stuff about Holy Spirits and, that sort of stuff. And that's where the major arcana of the tarot genuinely comes from. The minor arcana of the tarot is supposed to be the 4 elements of human life, not earth, air, fire, and water, but that of commerce, conviviality, conflict, and competition. And those were the 4 suits, the original 4 suits of the tarot. That's what it essentially meant. And then it became mysticalized by the various different magical groups. It became turned into this, the 4 tools of the tarot became similar to the sort of tools a ritual magician might use, and it sort of got overlapped. And so therefore the suit of wands became something which it was not originally. It was originally a reference to hockey sticks, and therefore sports, and therefore competition. So if people enjoy sport, they enjoy conviviality, they enjoy commerce, they enjoy conflict. So therefore that's the 4 elements, the mystical, real elements of what tarot is. And people forget about that because it's all been like overwritten with all kinds of revisionist histories about this, that, and the other. And all the mystical groups have sort of like come in and thrown their awe in, which is good, but it's also changes the attitude and understanding of what tarot is about, and the fact that it can be used for spiritual instruction or religious teaching. It can be used for contemplation and meditation. The symbols of the tarot are basically a form of early Christian iconography. Now, the church, of course, disapproved of that, and they decided to make it a little bit subcultural. They kicked it out of the church, basically. Then, hey, presto, you got all these cards with Christian images on them, which are in the hands of the traveling folk and the funfair fortune tellers and all that kind of stuff. So the church placed tarot in the hands of the people of the occult tradition. The church did that. They didn't think that these things were just like, what do they think they would do? Just like stop existing? There's been divination and cartomancy decks for centuries. All right, centuries. So they couldn't get rid of it. So what they could have done is kept onto it and instead provided instructions how it should be used. Don't want to gamble with it, but we could use it in this way, that way, the other way. Hello, dear viewer. Welcome to the show. This is, of course, me talking and chilling out for a few hours on a Friday night. I hope I provide you with some variety of pleasure and so on and so forth. So, of course, the subject of conversation today will be tarot, spiritual experience, that sort of thing. Delving deeper into like psychology or some aspects of what all this stuff is about, maybe, if I get around to it. Let's be honest, it's Friday night. I've just done an hour and a half live stream on Bigo Live, so my throat's actually pretty knackered already. So I don't think I'm going to be all that passionate. I'm just going to be sitting here and talking to you. And your job as a member of the audience is to enter things into the chat and talk to me and ask me questions. And if you want to have a tarot reading, we can arrange that too. And if you did want to provide me with a couple of quid through Super Chat, that would be very useful for me because funds are running low. Because that's essentially the way in which life can be, swings and roundabouts. But either way, I'm just like prepared to be entertaining and to provide you hopefully with entertaining answers to complicated and convoluted questions, and maybe even set you straight with some of your thoughts and feelings. Thank you for the thumbs up. That was very welcome. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll just sort of like take it easy. All right, because this is like, right now is kind of like a bit of like down time. I've been doing my day, then now I'm at my down time kind of like thing. And hopefully I can provide you with some entertainment. I mean, the whole history of spiritual experience is kind of like mired with all kinds of like complexities and different theologies. And, that's part of the problem. Part of the benefit is that, these ideas are still out there. And they haven't been destroyed by the march of time, the march of atheism, or the march of skepticism, or the march of fundamentalist Christianity. It still exists in the shadows, lurking in the darkness, ready to come out into the sunlight when the moment is ripe and the world has changed and science has finally understood that which is real and true and beneficial. And then finally, all of these ideas associated with consciousness and intention can then come out into the scientific world so that they can be used for human understanding, human communication, and human well-being, which had always been the intention all along. But, the complexity of all the wars between all the various different occult and pagan groups and chaos magic groups and all these stuff it's just going to slow things down. We got to stop doing that. We need to stop being in a situation of unity and a sense of purpose and a sense of right-mindedness and a sense of right direction when it comes to anything even remotely bizarre and peculiar and occult-orientated. Because these things are obviously natural because the phenomena happens in a natural world. Therefore, it's not abnormal. Well, it's abnormal. In fact, it's not commonplace. And it's unbelievably difficult to generate, sufficiently and reliably. Unless, of course, you live the life of a monk, which, of course, I don't. So therefore, I place myself in the experimental category. And I consider myself to be a transdeist because that means that I look into various different spiritual ideas and I choose to have some skepticism, even of those things which I have experienced myself, because my interpretation of what I've experienced could always be slightly off kilter. I could say this, that, and the other seem to happen. Those seem to be the circumstances whereby it seemed to happen, but I could be wrong. There could be other things going on in the background which could make it what it is, and will create things as a real, and it's only understanding all of those things which we can't fully understand as individuals who are just playing with this stuff, which needs to be understood by the scientific community at some point. I mean, what Isaac and Sargent did in the Explaining the Unexplained book was actually pretty groundbreaking, because essentially they pointed out that these particular, experimenters of the old days, when they were looking into psi and psychic phenomena, actually had very good scientific methodology, and their conclusions were sound. Okay, their conclusions were sound. So what that leaves us with is the understanding that there is a natural force there which could somehow be tapped into. Then it's a question of what that's about and what it's for and why it's there. And what we as individuals in our material lives are going through, and how that somehow connects to the phenomena of consciousness and understanding and this, that, and the other. I don't even know if any of this stuff makes any sense to you. This is just me doing a bit of a ramble prior to people turning up. So whenever you're watching this on the recording, you will at least have something to make you think. I mean, essentially, skepticism and being self-critical and being critical of other people's ideas is essentially one of the things that keeps you individual. It keeps you free as an individual. All right. Now, skepticism is not just poo-pooing somebody else's ideas or just poo-pooing a particular point of view. Skepticism is looking at the interpretation of what's happened in a new light and challenging it for the purposes of refining it. I mean, the whole process of the scientific world is to carry on experimenting and re-experimenting, testing different hypotheses as it goes. So therefore, that's why science is developing. Science itself is evolving. That's why we have the things we have these days. That's why we have the wonderful computer technology which we have today, which has brought my face to you because of the advance and movement forward of scientific thinking. Now, I don't see why human beings, ordinary human beings who are just a bit weird like you and me, shouldn't deploy the same level of thinking and rigorous self-honesty to what we experience. And also, instead of just thinking, oh, there's an interesting idea in that book, therefore it might work, instead thinking to yourself, well, that's an interesting idea in that book, therefore maybe I could do an experiment to see what happens. Not that I'm specifically attempting to achieve the things which that particular author said, but just like, what can this particular experience teach me? And sometimes you're lucky, you develop an experience, but on the other hand, you don't really properly understand that experience in any real depth or clarity until many years later, because that's just the way it works. Okay, that's just the way the things are. All right, you have to have the experience, then you have to grow, then you have to grow into working out what that experience means. I mean, I was wrestling with the idea in the book by Aleister Crowley, this idea of rising the planes. What is that? Okay, interesting use of phraseology. Maybe back in the day when he was writing it, it was something that was really, really common, and everyone within the occult and pagan world knew what that meant. Oh, it's rising the planes, we have to do this, that, and the other. Well, then I had to work it out myself. Okay, it's just this glib phrase there. And the way I saw it is get into meditation, go through your chakras one at a time, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and brilliant white. Focus on, where they are in the body, feel them opening them up, okay, one at a time, visualizing the color as clear and as pure as you can. All right, and when you reach the crown, try and go into a more prayerful state and carry on trying to focus on the emotion of rising. But it has to be in a prayerful state, which is relaxed. It's not intense. It's not the state of intense concentration, like when you're trying to answer a question in an exam paper. It's not the kind of intense concentration of being frustrated and irritable and angry. It's not the question of intense frustration or the sense of intensity that you might be in if someone's motivated you to work really, really hard. And instead of actually working really, really hard, you just end up in this state of tension because you think that when you're tense and you're stressed, therefore you're working hard. It's not that kind of concentration. It is this, it's what the Chaos Magicians called gnosis. But they called it gnosis really, really badly. It's a really stupid use of word. What they should have done is said prayer with visualization. Hello, Ishika. Great to see you. My name's NickDutch, and of course, if you didn't already know, but it's wonderful to have the first commenter of today. I intend and I hope to be online until 9 o'clock. That will depend upon whether I can keep my throat hydrated. I got a bottle of fizzy water there, so I can keep that on the go, hopefully, and just see what kind of questions and situations turn up here. So, a combination of maybe tarot readings, talking about tarot and weird experiences and weird supernatural experiences and the things that have happened in meditation and that kind of stuff, because there is a fascination there. Okay, there is a real fascination there, and there should be for all human beings. All right, psychologists think that they can try and work out the mind as a result of whatever it is that they do. All right, but we try and work out the mind and how the mind interacts with the rest of the universe. Okay, and therefore I think it's slightly more advanced. What are my spiritual gifts? It's difficult to break them down because I have to have a look at my experiences and I have to have a look at my exercises and practice. Sometimes there is a visual component to it. Sometimes there is an auditory component to it. Sometimes it's just a question of a specific feeling which seems to carry a message. I've done things like astral projection before, but that was really, really hard. If you haven't yet read the book by Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington called The Projection of the Astral Body, get yourself a copy and just study it, and study it as if it is the most important thing in the universe for years and years and years. And you will have things happen which will blow your mind. Blow your little mind to shreds, it will. All right, and there'll be your experiences, and then you can then learn from that there's, oh my word, the world is a little broader than I thought it was, and it's not just a question of the physical body, it's a question of like all the other stuff that can, it's a complexity of like how the universe is really working. I mean, if that stuff is real, which, you have the experience and you realize that it is, then what other implications, what other questions, what other this, that, and the other could we then say as a result of what else happens? Lucid dreams are a different game. It's almost like lucid dreams kind of like overlaps with astral projection. But astral projection is when you're going around the physical world. Okay, you're walking around the physical world. You're engaging with physical people through, if you do an astral projection and you focus your intention and the journey on going to see a particular person, you can then reach out and then you can have some kind of presence in their dreams. This has actually happened to me. It's of course, all these things are incredibly difficult, and sometimes just the circumstances have to be right, but you don't know what all the circumstances are. You can think about your concentration, your meditation, your chanting, your visualization, and the rest of it, but there's all kinds of like brain chemistry stuff and body chemistry stuff and all this, complexity, which can either create the situation or it could destroy the ability to actually have that particular experience. Yeah, but at least you've experienced it, though. You've actually floated above your physical form, and you felt that. Okay, then it's a question of extrapolating from that, trying to work out what that state of mind is, what the conditions of mind and body was for that to happen, and then to think about what visualizations you're doing, what sensations you're bringing up in your mind's eye. It could easily be that the hypnagogic state of mind, but it's like using the hypnagogic state of mind is kind of like a doorway or a springboard, because if your body ends up in catatonic, because the body has got to be just like unable to move, all right, but the mind has still got to be awake, and we find that difficult because at the end of a long hard working day you're tired and you want to sleep, all right, but astral projection is about maintaining your consciousness and going through the visualizations and entering into this like strange dreamlike state, but it's not, but like you're actually going somewhere. The way that Sylvan Muldoon wrote about it, he said you can like train yourself to materialize at a certain place. All right, so you're walking around your garden, around your house, around your estate, maybe like the front door of the post office near your estate. You say, okay, well, this is it. You practice it. You go and walk to it, and you tell yourself in your mind's eye, obviously not letting anyone know what you're thinking, but because they'll think you're crazy because they're not people like us. Okay, just say to yourself, okay, this is where I'm going to appear when I do it. This is where I'm going to appear when I do it. And you carry on doing that time and time and time again. You create the kind of like stress of habit or stress of desire of thinking that there's a certain place where you're going to manifest. And you force yourself. You force yourself to, no, this is it. This is what I'm going to manifest. This is what I'm going to like come out of my body, move horizontally, then right, and then suddenly like move, possibly even at superluminal velocity to where that location is, and that's where I'm going to come to. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. You carry on doing that again and again and again and again, and you think about the visualizations and the star visualization and the floating visualization and the elevator visualizations that it was all talking about. I mean, another way of doing it is when you're actually in bed is to try and visualize everything around you getting darker, but to try and keep your concentration going and your awareness going whilst you're visualizing everything getting darker. That's just a relaxing thing to do. Sylvain Muldoon suggested focusing your attention on your feet and breathing energy into your feet as a way of increasing bodily awareness, working on concentration, and also warming, increasing the circulation in your extremities as a result of the visualization and the breathing work and all that kind of stuff. So your body is more relaxed, it's more clear-minded, and your feet and your extremities are warmer, which means that your whole body will feel better, and therefore it'll be a useful way of increasing the ability to do the astral projection experience. I mean, if you read that book, which I regard as a textbook, The Projection of the Astral Body by Sylvain Muldoon and Howard Carrington, and you take notes and you study it just like you were in school or college, and you had to let's say you had to write an essay on a book. That's the book. All right, that is the one, and you got to bring all your middle school comprehension skills to bear with it, and to study this stuff with all of your dedication, and then hey presto, weird stuff will happen. It'll take ages, and that's part of the problem, because people want something instant. People go on to go and meet people who say they're magicians and witches and the rest of it, and they say things like, "So how do you do it?" And what they do is they tell you a superstition. They don't tell you how to do it. They tell you a superstition. They say, well, you burn a yellow candle on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, after having bathed it with frankincense oil, and you massage it a certain way. And after you've cast your circle and you ask your higher power to come down and do this, that, and the other, and then you light the candle, and then it's all done. It's all done for you. It's all done to you. Yeah. Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. That's religion. That's trying to enforce people to follow religious traditions rather than specifically to work on the concentration, to work on the mind, to work on the higher states of consciousness, and trying to reach that sort of vertigo-like gamma state of mind. I mentioned in a previous video about rising the planes that there's gamma state of mind, this high frequency vertigo thing, so that when you're in prayer, your eyes literally do rotate upwards inside your head. Because of the kind of spiritual ecstasy that you're experiencing. I mean, this is one of the states of mind. Well, thank you very much for your donation. It's very, very, very kind of you. I do think that there is some kind of importance to this. Now, when I was young, I had tons of these experiences in my teenage years and before, and also slightly after as well. That's when most of my weird experiences came, but I was too much of an immature little shit at that time to actually take it philosophically and to understand what's real and what's right and what I should be focusing in on. I mean, I should have thought these were curious experiences, but I can't tell anyone, and I won't tell anyone. That's what I should have thought, and just worked on my career and worked on who I am as a person. But I didn't. I carried on in a state of trying to persuade other people to do this stuff, and that's wrong. Okay, that's wrong. I think people have to discover it for themselves. I think people have to develop a curiosity for themselves. I think people have to learn to think outside of the box and realize. I mean, and on top of that, my own industry fucks with this. It just stops people. They just I mean, I'm a great fan of crappy supernatural movies. I like them, but they're crappy supernatural movies. And I can't watch that with someone and then have them turn around to me and say, you don't believe in that, do you? Which is, of course, bollocks. Of course, I don't believe something written by a screenwriter whose main obsession is to give people emotions and feelings and to make money from it. okay, should somehow be a expression of the way, the truth, and the light. I mean, what a bloody stupid thing to say. And if anyone talks like that, then they don't understand what I'm involved with. They might think they do, and they might think they do as a result of their own prejudices and their own stupidities and their own lack of thought. That someone like myself could actually be, an intelligent, contributing member of society who's trying to do well not only for himself but other people using his work. And is like clear-minded and intelligent and can actually work through various different thoughts. It's not a question of turning around to people and saying, "Oh, if you do this, then it works." I mean, I actually want to hit, with a bit of 2x4 around the back of the head, most occultists who say it works, because it's a lousy use of language. And I think it gives people who are in a state of desperation, which I was with my health once in a while, a sense of too much hope for what could be achieved. So, this is a very serious emotional and emotive issue for myself. But having said that, that doesn't negate the fact that there is some genuine force going on here. All right? The things I've experienced, the things I've seen, the things I've gone through, which gave me the intense curiosity about this subject. I didn't end up as NickDutch for a laugh or just to make a couple of quid. I mean, I'm doing essentially what I believe in and I believe is right, and I'm trying to get people to think about how they use their understanding of an experience and how they use their language when they're trying to describe it, both to themselves, all right, as well as to other people, because humans are wonderful creatures, okay? We can put ourselves into all kinds of situations and end up being delusional but convinced. It's part of the human condition that people end up delusional but convinced. Yeah, I mean, if you want proof, okay, you've got from now until the day you die, right, to read all the books and do all the meditations and do the exercises and to experiment. All right, because I think there's some particular things which are easier, shall we say, to get people involved with, and that they can learn by themselves and do by themselves. And one of them is astral projection, as described by Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington in the book Projection of the Astral Body. All right, that's one of the ways in which you can, with years. Okay, that's the reality check, with years of practice and trying to follow what he's talking about and putting it into effect and trying to work out what the real meaning is behind what he says. Okay, so, and then to put that together in terms of a cohesive approach and then to work on it. All right, the other thing would be some variety of remote viewing. I think that's something which more people could get on board with. But again, people treat this as something fun to do on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. All right, they don't treat it as being something which either is or should be a way of life. All right, an actual way of being and doing. And then you've got those involved in religious groups like the Wiccan community, which I love, by the way. Okay, but they are a religious community more than a scientific occult community, and because of that, it's just a question of, no, you got to do this, that, and the other, otherwise the gods and goddesses won't like you. I mean, that's religion. Okay, that's not trying to understand the way the universe works and to put together a cohesive nuts and bolts Meccano kit of how to put together an experience. Okay, I've got, I want them to be happy. I want them to carry on doing their thing. I think more and more people being people of faith is actually a good thing myself personally, but I still want people to have a brain and not to be operated by dogma. Therefore, deism and transcendental deism has to be, from my point of view, the way forward. All right. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I can, I'm not going to attempt things which come out of religion or spirituality. from the point of view of being someone who is temporarily following that way of being, because of course I'm going to. Aleister Crowley, when talking about the invocation of angels, says it is convenient to believe that the angel is there. It is convenient. All right. But afterwards, you can think whatever the fuck you want, really, can't you? You don't have to be someone who says, I believe in angels because I've experienced one. What you can be is someone who says, I've had an experience of a certain type and certain characteristics. This was the type and characteristics. I don't fully understand all the phenomena and forces which made this happen. However, what I attempted to do was this, that, and the other. But I don't know what aspects of my self-preparation beforehand would have actually had something to play in this. I am of the opinion that, let's say, a vegan diet and a saltwater bath beforehand is important. And I'm of the opinion that some forms of devotional activity to try and keep myself focused on target over a period of 40 days might somehow be a part of it. However, I don't actually know for sure. But this is essentially what I did. I know it sounds a little odd, but let's just try and focus on the phenomena itself and see basically what could have actually happened there. And is it possible to create another experience of a similar nature and similar type again? Okay, therefore you're asking yourself, is it repeatable? And then you try it again. And if it isn't repeatable, you then got to go through the process of, the post-mortem, trying to work out why different things happened or indeed nothing happened. All right. And for some people, it's a question of like the spirits are right or the spirits are wrong or the spirits aren't being present today, or, well, yeah, but also no as well. Because like you're the one who's doing the exercise, therefore you should have a certain level of control over it. You should have a certain level of presence in it. And you should have a certain level of understanding as to what on earth it is that has actually gone on, if that makes sense. All right. So this is one of the reasons why I say that like the most intelligent people in the world have all the questions. The least intelligent people have all the answers. Okay, so the people who have all the answers, those who are saying that it's definitely due to this doctrine, it's definitely due to this dogma, it's definitely due to past life on other planets, it's definitely due to the fact that the God and the Goddess is with you today, and all this stuff. But the person who's got a question says, well, that doesn't quite make sense. I mean, there's ways in which what you've just said just doesn't quite make sense. And I want to try and make sense of it because I think that there is some use to this one particular force, and we need to do something good in the world for other people because of it. All right, it is a question of for other people. It's a question of like, what is it that we as individuals are going to do and say today that's going to have some kind of benefit to other people? Now, at the most basic level, most people aren't actually going to get involved in occultism like me. All right, or indeed like the other good followers of my channel. They're just not going to do it. What they're going to do is they're going to dabble. All right, and they're going to dabble with little things here and there. They're not going to make sure that like so many of their hours behind closed doors and with the curtains shut alone in their room is dedicated to doing a particular meditation or doing a particular prayerful exercise or working on the chakras or working on this, that, and the other. They're not going to do it. So that's why people are so stupid and they want something simple. They want to be given a little prayer, a little affirmation, and a yellow candle to be burnt on Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's that. That's as far as they want to go. All right. They may buy themselves a radionic machine, but not necessarily try and work on how to use that thing, taking into account that their bodily energy has a part to play, their state of mind has a part to play. If there is a scalar force involved, then it would have to work in accordance with something which is happening in the brain and would have to work out basically what that is and what that state of mind is. And I've broken it down to the simple word, which is the word which always catches in the throats of pagans and occultists, and it is the P word, prayer. All right. Most occultism is like the state of prayer, but more so and exaggerated and brought into this like ultimate spiritual state of tranquil reverence. And then you apply your visualizations to it. Then you apply this, that, and the other to it. Then you do the raising of the energy and the sending out of the energy. Okay. That just seems to be the way in which I think it's all about. Whether it could be or not, I don't know. And then there's different theories as to whether, like, if you're trying to do a, as it were, spell for a particular location, and you're trying to bring a certain energy into that, whether it's peace and harmony or whether it's something else, The question is that concept something inside you, and do you have to have it first, or are you invoking it from the outside and bringing it in and sort of like summoning it to do something? And then under what particular conditions would it actually do it? And on the basis that your thinking is right and that there is some kind of consciousness associated with this thing which you're bringing into a particular situation, are you actually being sufficiently compassionate to that thing? Or are you just trying to, put it in chains? I mean, that lady who wrote the Exorcist book, the Exorcist Handbook, which I read, spoke about dealing with angels who seem to have been bound by spells, which was written in words that was taped around them or something like that. Are there any cons from working with the occult? Working with the occult is an extension of meditation and prayer. If you think meditation and prayer is negative, then that's a bad thing. As far as is there a hypothetical? I mean, there's tons of hypothetical negatives to absolutely everything. There's hypothetical things associated with things which don't really have any real negativity associated with them at all. It's just a question of doing things in moderation and with some clarity of thought. I mean, I would literally not be even remotely afraid. Okay, I would get your books, I would get your tools together, and I would play around. You could read Mauni Sadhu's book on concentration. That could be a good guide. But remember, what you're trying to do is to create a spiritual experience. Therefore, using meditation such as like, I am ascending slowly to reach God, that sort of thing, as a mantra, would actually be quite a powerful way of creating that kind of like transcendental spiritual state of mind. Whether you believe in God or not, it's a question of a higher concept, a higher thought, a higher feeling, and using those words as a shorthand for whatever that big thing is, if you get my drift. All right? It's a question of like creating through imagination, through visualization, through linguistic tricks, I suppose, as well as self-hypnosis of sorts, a state of transcendental consciousness. All right, and therefore an opportunity to perceive things in a different way and feel things in a different way. Again, that lady author who wrote that book on exorcism, she says things like, if it's imaginary, it doesn't necessarily mean to say it's not real. But then again, in what state of mind? Right? In what state of mind? Now, when I started off doing tarot, I got my sensitivity from very low states of mind. So talking about low brainwave frequencies and concentrating on slow down, slow down, slow down. But as I progressed, I've realized that there do seem to be different properties to a slower brainwave, meditative brainwave activity. And of course, the more sort of like high gamma brainwave frequencies, that slightly vertigo state, which you can get at the heights of prayer. All right. And also when attempting to do astral projection. Okay. I mean, there are some people who are like certifiable nutters with dopamine deficiencies who really shouldn't be messing with this stuff at all. But they're more likely to be attracted to it because they're in a mentally screwed up state of being. But you can't really stop them. So the thing to do is to like help them to understand things with clarity of thought. And one of the best forms of psychic defense, I suppose, is to make sure that language is used properly. All right, because when language is used properly, then essentially you've got a structured way of understanding the subjects at hand. You haven't just got people telling you that it's all down to the spirits, it's all down to the demons, it's all down to this, that, and the other. It might be, but on the other hand, it might not be. All right, you've got to have that state of like split-mindedness to a certain extent. You've got to have that state of when you're doing your meditation, you're a believer. And when you finish this, and if you are someone who's writing up a diary of all your experiences after each time, then essentially write down different points of view as well. Write down different questions that you've got, not just the sense of apparent answers that you've got. All right, because there aren't any hard and fast answers with something which humanity is struggling to deal with. Humans are still struggling to understand the oceans, and they're physical. Humans are still trying to understand the workings of the physical human body. That's why, there are advances in medicine happening. Humans are still discovering new species of this, that, and the other all over the damn place quite regularly. Oh, and we're also discovering how many of them we're killing off because of our own activity. I mean, my point is that Human knowledge is incomplete. We have scientism, which says that, well, whatever science says is absolute. I would say no. I would say that the laws of nature are absolute. But the laws of nature are still being steadily understood. And if we're in a world where there are billions of people, all right, all of them with organs of sensation, such as ears and eyes, and all of them with a brain, some of these people are going to see things and experience things which is not accepted by science. Some of the things I've been through with my physical health have been things which science and doctors have disagreed with, but it actually happened. All right. So therefore, science and medicine is rather slow. Well, there are lots of negative perspectives, all right, negative perspectives. But if you think about the world of politics, okay, you got the conservatives, you got the liberals, you've got your socialists or whatever. One is going to say negative things about the other. The other is going to say negative things about the first one. Because essentially, if someone's giving you a negative perspective, all right, that's because they're coming from a different denomination of opinion, aren't they? All right. It's just like Labour attacking the Conservatives or the Conservatives attacking Labour. They're two different points of view. But what neither of those two groups are doing are actually trying to objectively look at the phenomena in question and trying to work out what that phenomena could actually be about, how it was brought about, and what it could potentially be used for the purposes of human communication, human understanding, and human well-being. Because strangely enough, I'm one of these twisted people who actually thinks that we should be studying this and finding this stuff out for the benefits of other people. And I think that everyone who's an experimenter in all this weird stuff should have that same heart. Everyone. Which is why, when it comes to the magical religious groups out there, they are a problem because they are much more religious than they are magical. They are much more, in my opinion, and I could be wrong because my perspective could be, adjusted out of like a number of bad experiences, more interested in the progression of their faith rather than working out how to use this stuff to cure diseases or use this stuff to improve physical well-being or use this stuff to improve mental well-being and what the particular skills would actually have to be in order to put that into effect. And, this is a passion of mine. I really think that there's things wrong with the way in which there's lots of things said and done in the world. I mean, if you think about when the FBI and the Russians did their investigations into psychic phenomena, they did experiments, okay? The only reason they didn't follow it up is because they couldn't get the specific quality of information they needed for intelligence purposes. None of them ever said this is a load of rubbish. Ever, as far as I know. They just said they couldn't get the quality of information needed for military intelligence. And you have to have really, really, really precise, detailed information for military intelligence, don't you? All right, very precise information. All right, most of us people, we're working on the emotional level. We're working on the level of perceptions and feelings and that sort of stuff. We're not working on the level of the right number of molecules of uranium for the purposes of blowing up the Kremlin or something. We don't have that knowledge. Nor are we meant to, but instead we can look at symbols, we can look at energies, we can look at feelings, and that's why this industry is so good when it comes to helping people deal with their emotional issues in their relationships. All right, not everyone in the industry is brilliant at it, but on the other hand, this particular set of ideas that I've been associated with for so many years, it has a certain level of importance and a certain level of usefulness. But I also don't think that it's worthwhile keeping all of this all of this stuff purely for the contemplative, introspective relationship aspects. I don't think so. I mean, that's obviously the world in which I work. It's more to do with your boyfriend, your girlfriend. It's more to do with your husband, your wife. Are they cheating? That kind of thing going on. It's not actually about going in deeper and deeper and deeper. I think that the radionics people are probably much more interested and in tune with the idea of trying to get deep quality, accurate precision of perception using their variety of dowsing tools, using the radionics machines and the stick pads and so on and so forth. I think that culture has got much more of a sense of positivity to it. But again, there are other people who are just using these things as wishing machines. You know, you just think they're just having a quick dabble, just going to turn a few dials, and then all of a sudden, my wish I'll get a boyfriend and it'll all be lovely. Or, you know, I wish I'd get that job and it'll all be lovely, and just boom on the machine. But then let's say they get their job and they get their boyfriend, they'll then think to themselves, oh, it worked. That's the wrong use of language though, isn't it? That's the wrong use of language. The right use of language is, I did something else seemed to happen. I don't know whether there's a causal factor. I don't know whether it's just psychological and I've been changed by the experience and therefore I'm more receptive to the job or to the boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it is, you know, or indeed if there is something spiritual going on there, in what way did it operate to apparently bring about the result which I seem to gain as a result of using the radionics machine or burning my yellow candle at Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 in the afternoon. Well, you know, WTF. Just a question of more and more questions. I mean, every single thing that you experience in life, in my opinion, should be encouraging you to think more and more deeply about what's going on. I mean, basically, what kind of negative opinions have you got? If you had some kind of fundamentalist Christian saying, oh, that'll let the devil out. Oh, or has it been someone who's, you know, thinks they've had bad experiences, but probably was just a bit of a paranoid nonce who's just turned around to say, no, don't do it. Terrible things happen to me. Or is it someone who thinks that they're a powerful witch saying, well, I burnt a yellow candle on a Tuesday afternoon and my enemy had an accident? Really? What was the accident? Are they dead? No, they just sort of fell down and grazed their knee, actually. Yes. But I did my thing, therefore it must be somehow connected. No, that's delusion. That's putting too much pride in yourself. It's putting too much pride in your ability or belief of ability to do something. It's blowing things up out of all proportion and blowing up your ego at the same time. That's the real danger of the occult, false thinking. And false thinking happens as a result of bad language. And a number of bad books there are out there, all right, which just like, it's more like the sort of thing you'd see on the Legend channel late at night more than something which is real. I read a book by Shelley von Strucknell when I was young. I wish I hadn't seen that damn book. I mean, some of these books are written purely for the purposes of bringing people into the industry to become potential customers. All right, they're not actually written to try and advance knowledge. It's just a question of really simple stuff or little gift book stuff that you give to your, I don't know, your screwed up little goth girl neighbor who's going through some problems in their sexuality or something. This will give you something else to think about as opposed to worrying about whether you're gay or whether you're not. There we go, have that. And I hate that attitude. But you know, parents don't know how to bring up their young people. Young people don't know how to bring themselves up. Everyone's looking for answers, but they're instead of looking for more and more questions, they want to find someone who can give a reassuring, specific answer, and that's that. When essentially there's always more advanced, more different ways of experimenting. I mean, I've got health problems. I need to look after my health by myself. Because doctors can't properly help me, so I have to look outside the box. And I discovered Spooky 2, and I discovered rifing, and I discovered zapping, and I discovered all kinds of stuff. And I had to incorporate that into my life, as well as using vitamins and minerals and drugs, or pharmaceutical drugs, and herbs and all kinds of stuff at different times, at different ways to try and achieve my wellness. I had to ask questions. I could not stop. And it was just like wrong for me to stop, because you do a protocol for a while, you stick to it, you get some understanding from it and for what it's done for you. But then, but maybe you can go further. Maybe there's another protocol out there. Maybe there's another author out there which can provide a different level of understanding about the same problem. Maybe there's like a real need to carry on thinking broadly. You start off with one denomination of thinking, then you move on to another denomination of thinking, and so on and so forth. It's not a question of outgrowing the previous one. You just think about what you've learned from that, and then you move on and move on and move on. Yeah, I spent 11 or 12 years in the Church of England. I became a church warden, and I was asked to leave my position of responsibility because of my involvement in witchcraft. Okay? You know why? Because someone grasped me up to the archdeacon. Because they thought, we can't have a person like him in our church, being a church warden, serving the chalice, and all that stuff. If he's a witch. But yet they do prayer. And what's prayer apart from witchcraft? All right, they've got an altar bedecked with candles, upon which they will perform a symbolic sacrifice and provide the blood and flesh for people to consume during the feast. They have celebrations they do at the new moon and the full moon, yes. And they meet once a week. That's the Church of England for you. Yeah. And they have a go at us for doing witchcraft. What's wrong with them? And the power of prayer is essentially like a low form, a low form of all this stuff that I've been talking about since the past 16 years I've been on YouTube. Actually, is it 16 years? I don't know. It goes back a long time. 1.5 decades, I think it is, of me making videos on YouTube, talking about, different points of view, different thoughts and feelings, and trying to give people skepticism and thinking, and to be able to separate their religious life from their magical life intellectually, and to work out what they're actually talking about when they're talking about magic, and making sure that they can communicate themselves, properly, and to understand in truth and clarity what the heck it is they're saying. I mean, I've gone through phases of being incredibly critical and incredibly skeptical and incredibly this, that, and the other. But then I've gone through other phases where it's like having weird experiences, and then sort of like starting to settle into it and recognizing that what I've been doing all along has essentially been right. And so part of me living my life and doing the occasional, lesser right a pentagram here and there when I feel the need for it is about me doing what I believe to be right. I mean, I know full well that mad people also do what they believe to be right as well. So essentially, I've always got to carry on challenging myself to make sure I'm not, thinking something which is a load of rubbish. And to learn to be in truth and clarity and present in the moment, okay? That's also really important. Does causality apply to the universe? Thank you very much. Does causality apply to the universe itself, and was time created? How much mushrooms did you have last night, man? Jesus. Was time created? Who the hell knows? Time seems to exist, but consciousness-based experiences can, in fact, sort of like not warp time and space, but demonstrate the perception is not limited to the here and now. I mean, I got interested in prophecy as a subject after a whole series of very weird experiences, which was brought about by something which I now realize was me doing the very bare bones of a chaos magic spell, kind of by accident. What had happened is I'd heard about the Buddhist chant that was really popular in the sort of 80s and 90s, Nam Marengo Keo, Nam Marengo Keo. That one. I'm sure you've heard it before. And my parents were out. I was still like teenage years, okay? My parents were out. And I thought to myself, I feel like doing that chant. I feel like doing that chant right now. And whilst I was doing it, I thought, I know what? This will be a laugh, won't it? I'm going to make a wish afterwards. All right. And I did this chant, and I carried on doing it with a bit more energy and a bit faster, about 10 minutes worth of really enjoying it. And I think there's something about the state of really enjoying doing your meditation, prayer, and chanting, which sometimes does what some people call raising energy. Okay. And I then, at the end of it, made a wish. And the wish was, I wish to see the future in my dreams. And after that, I just laughed it off. I thought, I've been a very silly person. I've had a bit of fun, a nice bit of, emotional silliness whilst preparing for bed one night. And then I went to bed and I started having dreams. And I'd be waking up at 2:00 in the morning thinking that was a weird dream. And I'd describe it to myself at 2:00 in the morning, thinking, what was that all about? And it was like, something would happen in my life. And like there was a camcorder put behind my eyes and it was recorded. and it was played back to me a few nights earlier, just a few minutes worth of time. All right. And so it scared the living shit out of me, because after I'd had that moment when everything happened just as it did in the dream, okay, just as it did in the dream, I would then sit and think, hang on a second, it was on Thursday night, wasn't it? And I was sat on the edge of my bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it blew my mind. And so therefore it demonstrated to me that prophecy can happen. And I read a book called An Experiment with Time, I think it was called. And that was about a guy who used dreams who through having a dream diary, would actually get things happening in his dreams that would be connected to things that was about to happen to him. And he built up a theory about it. I can't remember the name of the author. It's just called An Experiment with Time. And this guy does this dream thing. Yeah, the chant is Nam, Mam, Marengo, Ko. Okay. And that was a chant. It's supposed to be, it was also the same chant which Tina Turner, may she rest in peace, used when she was going through some difficult times. And it refers to a flower, which is like the most beautiful flower in the region. All right. And it only grows out of the most stinky, mucky mire, but it's the most beautiful flower. So it's talking about goodness coming out of difficulty. It's talking about progressing out of negativity. It's talking about, nice, positive, spiritual stuff. Things won't be as bad as they are for you right now, kind of thing. All right. And therefore a sense of like progression and all that kind of stuff. Chanted to find lost objects. Awesome. That's a pretty good thing. I mean, it must be the same kind of force, mustn't it? Because you must have set your intention, then you go into your meditation, you go into your chanting, and then keeping your intention in place, it must help your mind receive inspiration. And I think that in a meditative state, you're much more receptive as well as transmitative. And I think that there are some people who are much better at transmitting, like doing spiritual healing and Reiki, and others who are much better at receiving, and are therefore sort of like forms of diviner. But also, I think the skill kind of like overlaps. So that's why when a dowser is trying to look for things a long way away, all right, they're setting their perception over space and time to that particular place from wherever it is they're sitting or standing. And it must have something to do with like changing the shape, changing the shape of the aura, setting out the tentacle of awareness and cognition and perception to a particular place. I don't know. But this is just like ways in which it seems to be at times. And it's just like weird. And I'll never fully understand it. I mean, that's it. But does causality apply to the universe itself? As in, was the universe created? I don't know. But are there forces of causality associated with consciousness? It does seem to be that way. I mean, what Dean Radin was talking about. So I'm just going to get myself a bottle of water. Back in a sec. Right, here we go. I mean, what Dean Radin was talking about was that of consciousness being affected by big things happening in the world. So let's say like when 9/11 happened and everyone became aware of it through the news, then something, there was a little spike on their little random number generators of a certain type, and that this could be statistically repeated to a certain extent. So I think that the Department of Noetic Sciences in Princeton is actually, I think it's Princeton, is actually quite a good thing. And now that there's now more objective proof about quantum entanglement coming out from the quantum physicists, it would make much more sense that, in maybe a few decades' time, there'll be some kind of connection between us lot and them lot. But in order for the scientists to take us seriously, once again, we've got to change our use of language as an entire occult culture. And I'm not going to do that with my small audience. So I have to tell people that this is the kind of attitudes which I think should be done. And then hopefully they'll tell other people again and just carry on spreading the message. I mean, getting the proper scientists to investigate this stuff, I think is really important. I mean, if someone has, let's say, a serious state of psychosis, and then they're given the right psychiatric treatment for it, and they, symptomatically become better. I think that's necessary and true and right. But what I'd also say is that there should be some very skilled spiritual healers working remote Reiki on them. All right. I think that should really, really be important. They can send love, they can send healing, they can, attempt to remove attachments, do some variety of basic exorcism on them, whatever, I don't know, from a distance so the mad person doesn't know it's happening. And to do everything with love through good training and good spirituality. I think that could be useful. I mean, back on the subject of the church or Christians objecting to occultism. The C of E church I was a member of before I joined the Unitarians, in which I'm now free to be able to practice as I see fit. They would, at the end of each service, have a very specific prayer about protecting everyone in the parish from disease and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking to myself, it's only just like a few altered states of consciousness away from being an occult ritual, a proper occult ritual, with all these people setting their intentions out. But of course, most normal people don't have the ability to have focused attention. It's because we're all scatterbrained with all of the detritus we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Worry about the bills and that argument we had with someone we knew down the street, and what's going to happen in work tomorrow, and all this kind of like intellectual detritus is stopping us from being able to have focus, intention, and concentration. But that's, of course, where Mind Machine and strobe light devices and binaural beats and that sort of stuff comes in, to give yourself some kind of training and basically just like silence the mind and shut yourself down from all that stuff prior to going into the search for spiritual experience. All right. I mean, even in the Church of England, they would have these short hymns that would be repeated and repeated and repeated during communion. That's called chanting a mantra, which is against the rules in the church. Has my rambling helped answer your question? I don't know if it has. But I'm always open to more questions. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts about things such as astral projection and spiritual healing? What about spiritual healing? What are your thoughts about that as an actual subject? Are you in favor of it? Do you think it's a load of rubbish? How do you think it operates? And do you have any questions about it? I mean, when I first heard about it and read about it, I again think I didn't fully understand what it was really going on about. I didn't think that, or shall we say, I tried to operate in a way of trying to create the high sense perception as Barbara and Brennan described it. But it took me a long time to try and work out what that's really about. And it is like a calm, tranquil, reverent, prayerful state of mind, and then enhance it and enhance it and enhance it through the sense of rising and high divine meditations. Okay, she was writing from a Christian spiritual healing perspective, so she used the word Jesus as a mantra. Not everyone gets on with that. Despite, of course, the fact that JC is an image in both the Emperor and the Empress card of the Night Sun Tarot, strangely enough, in male and female forms, because the Empress and the Emperor card of the Tarot refer to God and Goddess, or indeed male and female higher powers, which is why the Empress was often the way that Mary was described in the Book of Revelations, with 12 stars around her head and her foot on a crescent moon. Because it's the perception of Mary as being a goddess type character, which led to that. Again, that's another medieval Christian thing. But these days, it could be a female Jesus, or it could be the goddess of the earth, or Herthia, or something else like that. Diana, or whatever is regarded as being feminine and divine. It's all the same thing. I mean, my whole point about disagreement with aspects of Christianity, is because it's just the same stuff. I mean, in what way are those people any different to a group of Wiccans who are gathering around and casting circles and things? They're people of faith who have hope, who think that their consciousness is somehow connected to the divine will, who are making statements of intent. I mean, there is no difference. It's just another faith expression of the same basic witchcraft concepts. The church is essentially a whopping great witchcraft cult with people who don't fully understand what they're talking about. And that's one of the reasons why it's so quirky. There we go. So I'm going to put my bottle of water. I mean, I personally am of the opinion that having a certain level of understanding about the artistry, about what you're doing or what you're getting involved with, and trying to create a proper artistic environment has some importance, but it has to have personal importance. I mean, sometimes, I've received spiritual healing in a spiritualist church in which they always played rather nauseating New Age music. I'd have chosen better quality New Age music or something else which would actually prepare me for the work at hand somehow. But it has to be up to the individual. But of course, I didn't tell them to put on a different track because that was the music that they needed to do the spiritual healing upon me. And I did feel warmth. I could feel, when I had my sense of perception about me, I could see there was like rose quartz pink energy flowing through my body. So it actually put stuff in me, which actually stayed there and carried on doing some good. All right, there is something in spiritual healing which has some real importance, but it's not necessarily a replacement for any form of physical therapy at all. So my opinion would be, do everything that your doctor or naturopath says. All right, do everything that's right, taking into account the situation of your physical self, but also get the spiritual healing on top of that, because that will add an extra je ne sais quoi, a little bit of special sauce to the occasion, you know what I mean? And will actually help the individual to start moving further forward in terms of well-being of body and mind. I mean, I've attended some psychic fairs, and there was one girl who I saw receiving a spiritual healing, and halfway through it, she just burst out in tears. All right, she just exploded. I mean, properly, we're talking about bawling her bloody head off, because the spiritual healing had done something to her energy field, and it released some kind of trauma which come to her consciousness, and she had to deal with it and process it, and it was hard for her. I saw that. I witnessed that happening. So I think that really skilled spiritual healers are actually really important people. But they have to be really, really skilled. They have to understand how to change their energy field up, just like Barbara Ann Brennan suggested, and to understand the energy field and to have gained some level of perception of it as a result of really high, as it were, high frequency prayer of the right level, which takes them to a transcendental state, which enables them to perceive through the astral body and not through the physical, or less through the physical body. As I say, the phenomena itself is real. The laws of nature, whatever they are absolute. Crowley defined the magician as being someone who is a diligent researcher into nature, not someone who has total knowledge, but a diligent researcher into nature, in order to work out what's right, what's wrong, how to overcome problems, how to actually do things, spiritually speaking, and actually what it means to be a spiritual person, a spiritual being, and what the actual intelligence of that actually is, what the practices of that actually is, and what it entails to attempt to create a change of situation. Just the experience. Phil Hine once said, even if you could just try and make magic work in a small way, All right. But then the question is, to do what? For what purposes? In what way? And with what theories? And if your theories are correct, then okay, maybe that'll be all right. But what if they're wrong? All right. How deep is the thinking in phraseology like what he used? All right. And I carried on saying in my earlier days that, we should treat this as being experimental, because we're not going to find a way to bring your lover back. We're not going to find a way to cure you of your financial problems or cure you of your medical problems. That's, it would be rubbish to think like that. Then it would be incredibly linguistically irresponsible to communicate in that way. Mm. So how far have you guys got with your experimentation? What have you been experiencing recently? Does anybody here want a tarot reading? Yeah, I think that the Beatles were influenced by Buddhism. I think that's true, but I also don't think that they were specifically Buddhist only. I think that there's some very interesting use of language in their music. I mean, the Beatles were a very complicated band, really, and they were coming at the end of an era when music itself had developed into a form of art form, as opposed to something just for people to dance to or get off their head to. You know what I mean? It was an actual linguistic art form, and it had very interesting little devices in it. And it showed they used it to try and create different forms of meaning and expression. And some of it was just reporting upon life, and some of it was trying to be very political. There's one song on the White Album that the Beatles did, which was I can't remember, about piggies living piggy lives and that kind of stuff. It's supposed to be a commentary on communist Russia at the time, and how bad it was and how corrupt it was. Really, it's not a very nice song, but it's supposed to be there as an art form, talking, making a form of social comment about something that was actually happening in the outer world that was somehow wrong or somehow inappropriate and shouldn't actually have been done that way. It says there by Jazz UK, well, I did a course on tarot to find out more, but then I started seeing all that negative perspective and then stopped. I've always had spiritual experiences as a child and was raised on homeopathy. So therefore, trust your spiritual experiences, trust the homeopathy, and don't trust the lunatics who tell you, "Oh, don't do that, it's bad for you. No, no, terrible things will happen." The only real fear that Christianity has got is that people actually start thinking for themselves. Okay, because then people aren't malleable. I mean, states, nation states, they want the people to be relatively malleable, so therefore there'll be a nation state religion. Okay, but then what's wrong with being a part of a nation state religion and practicing the way that you see fit? Well, according to them, everything. Because they've got this particular interpretation, which is like the King James Version and subsequent interpretations thereof, which basically was like misinterpreted. There's lots of misinterpretation and lots of political stuff thrown in, and it's all become this complicated, convoluted cluster. Yeah, I mean, if you've had a real experience, all right, then you have to then work out what the characteristics of that experience was and under what circumstances it happened yourself. All right. Because within the magical world or within the pagan world, or because these are religious worlds, these are not really objective, truth seeking worlds. There are people in it who think they're truth seekers, but they're not. They're their own dogmatic fundamentalist believers. They will not be able to help you. All right. Just like people in church cannot help you. The person who can help you is that amazing, good looking person who stares at you in the morning when you look in the mirror. That's pretty much the only person you can ever rely upon 100%. But unless you get your thinking right, you can't even rely upon your own mind. All right. In the Book of Lies, again by Aleister Crowley, there was one bit there which says that the mind is the traitor. Because like you've been convinced by a bunch of fundamentalist lunatics to develop a negative superstitious reaction to tarot, a pack of playing cards, basically. And because of that, you develop this like negative emotional reaction. You think to yourself, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, that's bad. I can't touch that. I can't touch that. Someone's made me afraid of it, and therefore they must be right. Because that's what the animal inside the brain would do. You know, we are animals. We operate on very basic emotions. And one of those basic emotions is fear. And all of us are riddled with it. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what tarot can be used for. I mean, I've done tarot readings about some very serious decision makings in aspects of my life. What I would do is I would do the reading, I would look at what it seems to be saying, but I would not act upon it. I would not make a knee-jerk reaction based upon it. I would contemplate, I would cogigate, I would see whether I agree with the cards or whether I don't agree with the cards. And then I would have to make a reasoned-based decision as to how to go ahead. But I have to use my reasoned-based decision stimulated by different forms of information, maybe, to guide me in the right direction. All right, so there's nothing wrong with sitting down and thinking, okay, well, what's going to turn up? You know, should I actually date that girl I met on the Bumble dating site? Let's have a quick look. 4 of Swords. I got the 7 of Swords. We got 2 Swords cards coming out in a 3-card spread. Maybe she's not quite right for me. But we've also got the Arts card of the Tarot, which suggests a certain level of cooperation between people who are different. So maybe there's still some possibilities to make things work, but under what circumstances and what conditions, I don't know. But I may have to work out and watch out that this person might have a dodgy temperament and try and work things out bit by bit. But I'm certainly not going to I'm not going to do a card reading and do as it says, because it is the authority and the truth and the rightness. Because that would also be insane. That will be another over-the-top intellectual reaction. You can either have a fear-based reaction or you can have a reaction based upon total blind belief. Because all of a sudden you think it's the right way and true and light and it will dominate everything. No. Stop. Be objective to the experience. So the experience does not tell you what to think, just like a fundamentalist preacher would. All right? There's always more depth. Which particular tarot deck did you use? I think my question to you is, what tarot deck was it and what was your understanding of it? And I'm also Rider-Waite Starseed Oracle, the good tarot, and Work Your Light. So what you're looking at there is some very positive styles of tarot deck. Starseed Oracle would be connected to the Starseed faith, and the Starseed faith are people who think that they've walked in from like alien worlds or whatever. It's another way of saying ascended master, really. But some people think that they are much more ascended than they really are. And I've met people who thought they were much more ascended than they really are, honestly. Both young and old, okay? I haven't heard of the good tarot. But it looks like you're trying to focus on positive messages and positive ideas and all that kind of stuff, which is great. Um, but what kind of messages do you think that it gave you? What kind of thoughts and feelings? What kind of like experience was it to read with those decks? Pull myself out of a dark place, I guess, and to understand more about why I was getting into a particular situations. Did it help? I mean, that's the most important question. Did you feel you got benefit from that, and did it move your understanding about life onto something that's much more appropriate? Okay, well, then you've got your money's worth. You got essentially what you wanted from it. But then the next question is, what is now your thinking about using that method to attempt to achieve understanding and knowledge? I know you're taking a bit of a pause to think about that. And I'm asking you because I want to understand what effects those experiences had upon you, and whether the thinking which you've now developed is necessarily right, or needs a bit of chipping in the right direction. I mean, I see tarot as a means of opening up intuition. I see tarot as a means of balancing my impressions with symbolism. Well, based on my experiences, it worked for me. But then, after hearing about the negative things, I thought there might be some sort of backlash in the future. Bull. There's no backlash in the future. The only real backlash is you enhancing your life, okay? Moving your understanding of spirituality into a much greater level of depth and more nuanced, more complicated, and therefore stopping you from being under the control of the church, which to me sounds like a good thing. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with being a practicing anything of any faith. That's all. All right, it doesn't matter. It's just good for you to have some variety of faith, and if you don't want to belong to a faith-based community, then get out your tarot cards and runestones. It's just a way of doing things, of meditating, connecting with your higher power somehow, through language, through arts, through symbol, through all the things that makes us human. We are the art creating animal, so therefore we look at art and we get inspiration from art, and our thoughts are very complicated and convoluted because our lives are full of complex, convoluted things. It always has been. That's the way that we are as people, as beings. And we never fully understand anything. So therefore our emotional understanding and our emotional well-being when dealing with understanding is probably much more important than like anything else. All right. And why would you think that the Christians would be right? What went wrong with you that made you think that one particular group of people who only look at the world through one particular lens, all right, within the intense diversity of spirituality in the whole world, that they could actually be right and the bastions of truth and knowledge and wisdom and clarity of thought and perfection in every possible way, when they're just a bunch of very screwed up little monkeys. Look at all the terrible things the Catholic churches, the people in the Catholic Church has done. Priests fiddling little boys and all that stuff. It's terrible. I mean, these are human beings. They've got issues. And one of the issues the individuals have got is a sense of powerlessness over other people. And so they try and remove that sense of powerlessness through telling people what to do and what not to do. And this, that, and the other is scary. And this, that, and the other is bad. Because them as individuals, they hurt when they're not hurting other people. All right? Yeah, I started developing my art as well and posted stuff online. But then I had an influx of people wanting art pieces. And I couldn't cope. So I retracted. Okay. But you actually developed artistically, so maybe you can try and work out a way of making sure that the right quantity of the right type of art gets out to the right people. Okay, the right quantity of the right type, and also managing your energy and managing how the inquiries come in, and then basically get back to it. It sounds to me from what you're describing that you're incredibly talented and gifted. And don't you think that like anything which helps and enhances that is really important to you personally, spiritually speaking, because you're that kind of like tactile, art creating animal in your own right. All right. So you can't allow the Church of England or the Catholic Church or whatever to say something to you and make you do something or not do something. All right. Because you've got to think about who you are as a person and what it is you're going to achieve in going through the process of like, your life path and making things work and work out right for you. And to do so from a spirit of like, happiness and joy and you getting what you want from your life and being fulfilled. I mean, everyone wants a community. So so if you want a church, I would suggest you have a look at the Unitarian community, because they won't tell you what to believe at all. At all. All right, that's why I'm becoming a lay preacher with them. Okay. I don't know if I'll become a reverend later on. I might. It'll be really rather weird after my life history, but I could actually become a priest at some point when I'm really old. When I'm very, very old. In internet terms, I'm probably already very, very old, but that doesn't matter to me. I mean, in that respect, the internet's quite weird, because the internet is a relatively young invention, and all of a sudden I'm an old person on it, but it came about when I was in my 20s, yeah, I think it was in my 20s. 1995 was the big time, wasn't it? That's when, boom, the internet suddenly became something that people wanted and had access to, but the computers were so slow. And the internet was so slow. It was like the whole thing was being powered by gerbils on a wheel somewhere. You'd have to wait like about 5 minutes for a page to load. And then you'd be sitting there saying, oh my God, that's so quick. It was terrible. We didn't have all the good things about broadband, like, proper full color, photographic quality imagery. And, just all this video stuff that we're doing now. Apparently it was the porn industry which helped to motivate the movement towards good quality internet video and that sort of thing. So it is said. So essentially the reason that I am here is with thanks to lots of little teenage boys who've got a lot of pocket money. What particular spiritual and creative abilities are you working on, especially the spiritual side of things? What is the thrust of your exploration in that respect? Okay. But out of all the things you've heard of, what interests you the most, and what do you feel resonates well with your character and your energy field? What is it? Telekinesis, prophecy, meditation, spiritual healing? What other good, wholesome, fun, summoning Beelzebub to go and kill your enemies? I mean, obviously, that's another fiction and fantasy. But what is your thing? Well, get back to meditation and playing around with that for a while, because that's something you can just do as a practice. And then with the passage of time, you'll read more and want to explore more. But definitely read The Projection of the Astral Body by Sylvan Muldoon and Harold Carrington. Definitely. I would also recommend finding out a few books on radionics, which are a little bit more clear-minded with their ritual, so to speak. But also definitely look at Barbara Ann Brennan and her books on spiritual healing, which will be very 1990s New Age, and also Christian 1990s New Age as well. So that might be a bit of a challenge for you. But there's things written, between the lines in that book, and also in the lines of that book, those books, which could actually be of interest to you in your journey of self-discovery and working out what you're turning into and how your thoughts and feelings are moving forward and how you're moving forward as a person. A cat called Muldoon. Awesome. Uh, yeah, sure. Not a problem. I mean, I'm going to just like end, when I do end the stream, it'll just be like turned into a video, which will be on my thing, and then people will be able to look at it, refer back to it, and choose what to object to, uh, as people do, as people on the internet do. That's just one of those human things. All right. I mean, actually, if you want to build up a good or cold library, get the physical version of The Projection of the Astral Body by Muldoon and Carrington, because his reference section contains a lot of the occult books which I read in my early days. Because I basically, more or less started with that book, which seemed to say something that was true and useful. And I thought I'd try and understand how he got his ideas together. And that brought me more into the world of magic in a much more visceral sense. But essentially, magic itself is just prayer with the help of symbols, which are meditated on or drawn in the air, plus a few physical props. Okay? And most of it is done through meditation. And high-level meditation, high frequency meditation, crown chakra open type meditation, with a sense of using suggestions associated with trying to reach divinity and going up and going up and going up. That just seems to be really important. I'm not quite sure why. But apart from the fact that, I mean, we could hypothesize that higher level of prayer, that higher state of prayer, is somehow a gateway to access the world of spirit. We could assume that. So, if Christians in the old days were told to pray daily, I don't think they were just sitting down on their ass and doing the Our Father thing. I don't think so. Just repeating words. Oh, I just say these words because I've been told to by a priest. No, maybe they were actually proper spiritual people. I mean, early Christianity in the first century was very communist. And then when it became a state religion, all of a sudden, the nation state didn't want it to be communist anymore. So they turned it into something completely different. And that's why we've got right-wing Christianity today, because essentially right-wing Christianity is not Christianity. It's just conservative values. And it's bullshit. All right. England is not a Christian country. England is a country which is run by a particular cult, which has stolen ideas from essentially progressive, lefty, hippie freaks and turned it into something that's basically like the complete opposite of what JC was talking about. which is a bastard. You know, but on the other hand, it provides employment for doddery old people with stupid ideas. So we might as well just allow it to carry on existing. So, what are your favorite occult books then? What have you read about magic and all the rest of it that floated your boats and made you like interested in things? Initially when I first came across the chaos magic culture, I thought that would be actually quite good because there were some books there which suggested that what they're trying to do is break down the nuts and bolts of what was really happening. But I don't think that they did. I think that there's various different attempts there, but they didn't keep it right. John Zaffis, I haven't heard of him. What's he all about? Yes, that's right. I'm too lazy to quickly open up a new window and Google him whilst I'm here. You can tell me. Because I started my day at 5:30 because I've been working since about 6 in the morning. And it's now 7:28 at night, you know. And on top of that, I've done a 1.5 hour live stream on Bigo Live today prior to coming on live and being online for 1 hour and 36 minutes and 27 seconds. Or maybe I could quickly open up a browser anyway, and we'll see what he's on about. Born December the 18th, 1955, a paranormal researcher based in Connecticut, United States. And he was also on a TV show on the sci-fi channel, The Haunted Collector. I think I may have seen a couple of his episodes. And he's been on Coast to Coast and Ghost Adventures, and he's quite a big TV personality in the weirdo field. Zaffis has also taken part in and assisted with the work of well-known exorcists like Bishop Robert McKenna. Interesting. He sounds like quite a guy. The nephew of Lorraine Warren. Comes from good pedigree, obviously. It does seem like he might know his stuff, but he might just be, trying to build his career. It's a question of that balance there. I mean, if you feel there's something he said which is useful and beneficial, then cool. I mean, I haven't read any of his stuff. I probably have seen him on TV at some point. It's just I wouldn't be able to place the names of the face, if you know what I mean. Because I do actually watch a lot of crap TV. You might not think it to look at me, but I watch a lot of crap TV. And so I probably have seen it, and I used to be a man. When the whole the ghost hunting TV shows became a thing, way back in the day. Starting off with that woman with blonde hair who always had the mascara on, whatever her name is, can't remember. There was plenty of ghost hunting groups and ghost hunting shows occurring at that time, which started this. That kind of show started that whole trend. So I've seen a few. I've actually been on a few professional ghost hunts where very little happened. Resident medium saw a few things, but not much happened. But I've also been on one or two when there were things happening, like the voices of children in a hotel which had no children in it being heard. And I actually heard that. All right. So there's there's things, but we didn't pick up anything on the infrared, and it's just rather bad. I would love to actually be I'd like to do more in the way of ghost hunting moving into the future at some point, because I think I've changed in terms of my skill set and my perception and my understanding over the years. Because you can't really rush into your spiritual development. It's something which grows alongside with you, and steadily becomes part of who you are. And you go through adjustment and all that kind of stuff, and start to work out what is right, what is wrong, and what is clear and what is true. I used to think a lot of things would work because I was told that it would work by someone. How weak was I? I was told that other things couldn't work because somebody told me at some point. How weak was I? All right. You find out the truth, not necessarily through reading, but through doing and experimenting at home. And if you can't do something, or something doesn't happen, then it's not a question of that's not a real phenomenon. It's just that you're not able to do it right now. See where I'm coming from? All right. So that's basically a way of working out what your skills are and what your perception is, through working out what your skills and your perception are not. Does that make sense? Hope it does. So what did you get from John Zaffis then? What kind of ideas did you pick up from him? Okay. What I think I could do is just a couple of demonstration quick tarot readings, seeing whether that can actually interest you or inspire you. Whilst I'm here, might as well give the cards a quick shuffle. Just like what I do on my Bigo live streams. Okay, just a little 3-card reading, but this time using the Book of Thoth Tarot. I've got all the rest of my cards behind me on the other table, which I use for that broadcast. And just see what comes up. And of course, you're perfectly free to ask me questions and carry on chatting with me in the chat. That's perfectly doable. Okay. His main principle is that spiritual stuff can become attached to objects. I think that there is some truth to that. But the question then is, what does the spiritual stuff which is attached to the objects actually do? How does that then interact with all the other spiritual things in the universe? And how does it interact with physical things? And how does that create a change in the world? In what way does that have an effect on balancing or unbalancing the world or a situation? It's again a question of, there are further questions to be had here, not necessarily specific answers, which can be gained very quickly and easily. But yes, I think there is some truth to that. But again, I was once given a talisman by a guy who was a magician, and that was carved runes, wonderful, beautiful bind rune. Okay, and it's supposed to be there to help to improve my health and well-being. I don't think my health and well-being actually improved when I had the thing on. So essentially, it wasn't specifically targeted to, let's say, what the health problem could actually be. I think the things like the Sai Sangiovini stuff is more designed to be more, focused to a particular cause for a disease, and to use the power of energy manipulation, spiritual healing, and radionics and Reiki as a means of delivering that particular energy. but even that would actually lack some aspects of precision. When it would come to radionics, it's more a question of divining, using the pendulum, using the stick pad, using the dials, and using symbols as to what could possibly be the thing which is out of balance, and then trying to do another thing using the same device to restore that balance as a result of, proactive spiritual healing energy delivery, what you would call prayer power, but of a very, very targeted type, specific to that one particular, problem in the disease, and then hoping that it's actually going to actually do the job alongside other things. But my general theory is that, when it comes to physical well-being, everyone should do precisely what the doctors tell them. But then on top of that, you also stack things like Rife therapy, and you stack Spooky 2 on top of it as well. Spiritual healing on top of that as well. And then you're more likely to get some improvement, in my opinion. So you've always got to do everything the doctor says. But you've also got to do other stuff too to try and bring the energy of your wellness further forward. That would just be a way in which I did it. I mean, if I got cancer, I would do everything the doctor said. I would do the right kind of diet to the best of my understanding. I would do specific programs on my Rife machine in order to try and help everything out. And I would also probably go to a spiritualist church periodically and just say, give me some healing, give me some good vibration here. Because they can, drag out some negative energy, not permanently, but to a certain extent, and therefore purify the environment of the body. This is my belief. This is not hard and fast scientific fact. This is just my opinion. But because that's the way it seemed to be. I did Glastonbury in 97. No, 94, that's it. I did Glastonbury in 94, and I attended a spiritual healing tent there, and I could physically feel them putting energy in and taking energy out. She was a very, very gifted healer, that woman. Very gifted. And I've also had someone doing medical remotes on me from America. This was actually one of my customers on Kasumba when I was on Kasumba years ago. And she was paying money to talk to me so that she could then give me a medical distance reading, which she did perfectly. She picked up the candidiasis, she picked up a few other things, and all this stuff which only the doctors would know about. And it was staggering what happened. I was sitting there being paid for her to talk to me, and she was teaching me. All right, she was actually proactively teaching me about this stuff and about how it's done. I've had so many experiences like that when there was clients which I've had who've acted to assist me in my training, who have acted to assist me in my personal growth even. And I thought, this is weird, because there's nothing is one way in this world. In this, whenever we go into the world of the New Age and the healing and the spiritual and all that stuff, it's not just one way. Okay, you get benefits, you give benefits. All right, you give benefits, and all of a sudden the benefits come back to you, and it kind of aids you in what you are and who you are. Okay, so I owned 2 Chinese wooden dogs of faux that my grandfather was asked to burn by someone who believed they were cursed back in the 60s. He felt his life was bad enough that it didn't count, so he kept them. What happened then? You've got me intrigued now. Dogs of faux. I haven't heard of those. Is it sort of just scary dog sculptures? I mean, what's going on there? I mean, what I find hilarious is all the fear and paranoia about the Ouija board. It's just a Monopoly board, really. It's a piece of cardboard or wood with some printed letters on it. If that frightens you, then there's something wrong, with you as a person. It shouldn't frighten you. What should frighten you is there are people out there who are prepared to frighten you with the superstitious fear and dread. That should be much more of a concern for all of us. The fact that there is a culture out there of people who are trying to frighten you. Either people who are using Ouija boards and things, or people who are critical of the Ouija boards and things. But they're both there to scare you. I mean, my mother tried to educate me out of out of my beliefs to give me a book on atheist science of the brain, saying there is no ghost in the machine, I think it was called. And I thought, it's bollocks. It's not true. Direct personal experience shows me things. Okay, it shows me through direct personal experience that there is something weird in this world. And I think I have a reason to believe in God as a result of it. Not necessarily in the God of religion, but a sense of presence, which we're all somehow connected to, of which there's like different hierarchies of being somehow. We probably end up going back from whence we came after subsequent visits to various different worlds, or many reincarnations on different places or planets or whatever. Having said that, maybe some people out there are thinking, yep, Nick, you're obviously alien because you make no sense to me. But that's just them. I mean, there was a time in my earlier days when there was someone trying to troll me to say that I was some reptilian. I was actually a reptilian alien. Oh, God. And Daryl Sloan sort of like took the mickey out of them nicely, if my memory serves me correctly. Daryl Sloan's a great guy. I mean, again, on the subject of spiritual stuff becoming attached to objects, the lady who wrote that book on exorcism says that with her divination cards she created, she would like put them over incense, or put them through incense smoke, very noxious incenses, in order to try and drive away any nasty spiritual influences from them prior to using them. So I think maybe there is some truth in that. Can you guys hold on tight whilst I just go and visit the bathroom? Back in a sec. Sorry, I got to muted myself there for a second. Can you hear me now? Have I got that? Yeah, I've got that thing turned on. That's good. Yeah, I think it is cool to own odd stuff. I think that odd stuff is actually really rather good. I do actually rather like junk shops, but I think that those bric-a-brac places with ornate weird things in them But there is something strange about stuff which is old and used to be owned by other people, and you don't know who they were, and you don't know what they were about, and you don't know what thoughts and feelings they had. And therefore the feeling of creepiness associated with old and odd things is more to do with what it meant to someone in the past and who that person was, and whether you're inviting something from somebody else's life into yours. So there's there's a, and I don't know whether that's just a human superstition thing or whether that's actually an energy perception thing. If you do walk into a junk shop, do you feel that there is some kind of other energy of these other things that has some kind of presence and some kind of effect on you? It would be more fun if they were faux dogs, though, wouldn't it? As in your evil foe. So, has anyone got any other weird experiences to report? Any other strange things happening? Does anyone want a tarot reading? I'm here for your entertainment as well as education and enlightenment. I mean, I promised I'll be here till 9 o'clock. I don't know whether I'll be able to make it because it's been a bit of a long day already. But if you do have things to say to me and you've got questions to ask, then place it in the chat because that's why I'm here. Just caught the live. Yes, I would love a tarot reading. Okay, not a problem. Remind me your date of birth and let me know your question. Synchronicity, what's your opinion? That's a very good question. Okay. Tina, write your question in the chat and I will get to it in a second. I'm just going to try and answer what William Hancock has asked me. What is my opinion on synchronicity? If you mean, like, let's say doing a magic ritual and all of a sudden something happens afterwards which seems to be in agreement with what you were trying to achieve, that could be correlation rather than causation. But on the other hand, it might not be. See, that's the only issue. If it's a question of things which you suddenly need coming into your life, then essentially no one's actually gone into great detail as to precisely what it is that's created that. Although some people think it's because, I don't know, your identity or your will is somehow in line with something or other. We don't really know. But my opinion is somehow it's like it's like moments of prayer when you start to notice things. I mean, sometimes it's like you suddenly notice things which are there anyway, but you notice them because you've done your little ritual or something like that. But sometimes it's like sometimes it's more like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone does. But as far as it from a reading point of view, I think you're genuinely picking up something. But the outcome of the cards is one thing, and what you're picking up energetically is another. But what you're picking up energetically suddenly gives you like an inspiration as to what the card reading could possibly mean, which might be different to what you would have thought it would have meant if you'd done it under different circumstances. Because it's more like the intuition picking up on specific individual symbols rather than the archetypal meaning of that one particular, I don't know, 5 of coins reversed or whatever it's. So, Tina, your question is, will I find a new job that's fulfilling? Let's have a quick look. All I can do is tell you what's coming out in the reading, and the rest is up to you, because that's the way it is. Number 1, number 2, number 3. I would say yes. You got some quite interesting signs coming on out there. The most important one is your 9 of Cups, which essentially points to, as it's literally called happiness. It's a card of happiness. It's there for a sense of the right attitude, the right direction, and the right growth, and a sense of feeling celebratory after a period of time. Your Knight of Cups, which came out reversed, does suggest to me a sense of gentleness in your approach, but also a sense of strong willpower, because you still have a bit of a fight to go through. And yes, you would have competition. So I'm not going to give you an answer this clear of cuts, but there is the right quality work out there, and you will probably be able to get it quite soon, let's say in the coming few months at the outside. That will be my guess on the strength of the reading. Right. Okay. What kind of 3-card spreads are there? What different ones do you use or don't use? I'm going to be driving home, so I may not be able to reply quickly, from Texas, America, so it's like 2 p.m. here. Okay, well, thank you very much for tuning in from Texas. How many different kinds of 3-card spreads are there? As many as you can create. All right, what you do is you place your 3 cards down. But before you do it, you have to have an understanding in your mind's eye, all right, in terms of truth and clarity, as to what each position really means for this purpose. I mean, that's one of the things you've got to have clear cut in your mind's eye first and foremost. It doesn't really matter what book you've read about what positionings they should be in, whether they should be in a vertical line or horizontal row, whether they should be diagonal, triangular, or inverted triangle, or whatever it is. Okay, that shouldn't actually matter to you. What should matter to you is you have it clear in your mind's eyes which position does what. So if you're using spreads which you have trusted because you've read it in other people's books, then fine, that becomes part of your tradition. That becomes part of the way in which your energy feels, your thoughts, your feelings, your habits, and your habitual thoughts would then interpret those various different positions. All right? And that doesn't actually matter. All right? But on the other hand, where do you think the center of perception really is? All right. Do you think it is from the cards talking to you? Do you think it is from your psychic perception picking things up? And it's just the ritual of laying down the cards which helps you to tune in. And then the subconscious mind picks up specific aspects of the symbolism of the cards and creates a message for you. On top of that, in what state of mind are you in when you're doing your divination? Is it relaxed? Is it prayerful? Is it euphoric? Is it a tranquil, receptive state of mind? Are you focusing your attention your intention on a specific person or place or thing or subject? Okay, there's lots of nuanced different levels there. So you have to have a certain level of mindful self-observation to try and work out why you feel that your reading is doing what it's doing. Okay. Is there the possibility of interference? Where could that interference be coming from? From your own mind, from your own trauma, your own personality? Or is it an external interference in the form of some variety of hypothetical spiritual force which could be influencing not necessarily the outcome of the cards, but the emotional reaction you've had to the cards? All right, these are the kinds of layers of thinking and reason and rationalization that you do after you've done it. Then to work out whether the attitude and the perception of the reading itself was in fact right when you were doing your divination itself. All right. And remember, of course, that if anyone says that divination is somehow unbiblical, they haven't read the story of Joseph, who had a golden cup, which the Bible says he used for divination. And yet he's a guy who's even been put on the stage. There's the play of Joseph in his amazing Technicolor dream coat. He was no occultist. He was a witch. It's like you and me. But he had his spirits. He had the spirits, and he was therefore good because he was on the side of the people from whom the storybook is written. Yeah. I still get knocked by that. No, you shouldn't do witchcraft and divination. Let's read the story of Joseph. Oh, I've got a golden cup. I use it for witchcraft and divination. Hey, and I'm biblical. Uh, being involved within the work is a good thing. We always need to have some of that going on at some point because, like, we have to learn to challenge what goes on inside our own minds. And I also think that attempting to be involved with complementary health and trying to improve your physical well-being is also necessary to clear up some of the issues which could be slowing down your passage of thought. I mean, my candidiasis was really rather bad at affecting my sense of perception and turning me into a really unpleasant person when I was young. All right. So, and so, as I recovered, I built my tarot business. I got Spooky 2 equipment together and I could work on my health. I could actually do what I wanted to do all along, really. And I managed to reduce it so much that my mind cleared so amazingly. But then that became like even more of kind of like a trauma because then I'd had all of the memories of all my bad behavior when I had the candida really worse. Still, present in my memory. So it was, it's really complicated. I was practically disabled for many years. Yeah, a Reiki practitioner looking towards an alternative approach. Well, if you haven't yet looked into Spooky 2, Rife Therapy, do so. All right, it doesn't solve all your life problems, but bloody hell, it really does something. All right, I mean, when I first got my first 2 generator kit, I thought, I've spent this money, I've got to take it seriously. And then, hey presto, scary things happened, even with the remote. Even Spooky 2 remote scared me because I got results of sorts from it. So I just turned this into part of my way of life. I mean, I'm still using pharmaceuticals, I'm still using herbs, I'm still doing my vitamins and minerals, still doing a workout once in a while, and my Pilates class. I'm trying to look after myself. Okay. But also I add Spooky 2 to it because that's just proven itself to be a thing. Okay, Spooky 2, that's the word spooky followed by figure 2 hyphen MALL for mal.com. Spooky2 mal.com. That's where it comes from. And I would also suggest going to the Facebook group Spooky 2 Rife for Life. That's RIFE 4 as in word FOR life. Spooky 2 Rife for Life. And it's worthwhile joining that group to find out about it. But when you do join that group, make sure you answer all the questions because you join it, you got to answer all the questions and answer them truthfully, because that's really really important, really beneficial. And then the administrators will be able to let you into the group. It's very much a private group. We don't allow bad behavior. I'm one of the moderators there. And I spend a lot of my time. I spend a certain proportion of my time helping other people on Facebook with training and troubleshooting. And I also do the conferences and webinars for Spooky 2 because it's so amazing. All right, it's just done so much for me. There's a question of finishing off my healing with more of that technology, as well as more of pharmaceuticals, herbs, diet, nutrition, and all other kinds of fun stuff to just improve my well-being. It's worthwhile. I mean, rifing just freaked me the fuck out. It really did, because I'd heard about it many times at various different times of my life, and I've gone through times of interest and then times of skepticism, and finally getting a Spooky 2 rifle machine and then being able to use it and getting things happening inside the body as a result of it. It was just like, oh my word, lumps of fungus this big coming out of my backside into the toilet bowl, white and rubbery, just being killed off by frequencies, not by herbs or anything else. That actually happened to me. Okay, as I said, we're in a world of billions of people, and some of them are going to experience things which is not yet accepted by orthodox science. All right, that's just the way it is. And they're going to talk about it, but orthodox science is going to turn around and say, well, we haven't got the evidence for that because you haven't been looking, you asshole. The holistic method is very important. Sometimes there is still a necessity for the allopathic method without the shadow of a doubt. Okay, doctors and surgeons exist for a reason, but they don't know everything and they can't do everything for you. And instead, you got to work through things yourself. None of us are perfect, no matter what our discipline, no matter what our education, no matter what we are, where we are. Even the greatest academic theorists of this, that, and the other, they make mistakes. I mean, what was it? Michael Greger. I love Michael Greger's videos on YouTube. Okay, and I've been following him since he started out. But he did say that there's no evidence of parasites in people in the West. This is rubbish. There's plenty of evidence out there, but science hasn't actually looked at it. All right, I've had an issue with. I'm still dealing with an issue of parasites myself. Okay, that's just the way things are. There's a certain quantity of truth there, and I think that it's in the future, and it will be a long time in the future. I think that it'll probably be a thing for every single human to go through regular deworming once in a while, and there'll be an official governmentally approved protocol to try and reduce the weight on the NHS or on private healthcare, and as a good preventative thing. And the things I've been finding out recently about how antiparasitic pharmaceutical medicines are also used by some people is rather curious. And I think to myself, maybe there's something else going on there that's just not in the orthodox public eye. Okay, so we should all have lots of questions about what has been taught to us, not because we think that what's been taught to us has been taught to us for some stupid conspiratorial reason. All right, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. All right, I think that it was a good thing that I have my COVID vaccine. I really do. But that doesn't mean to say that if I did get COVID, that I would like not use Spooky 2 and ivermectin or some other stuff on top just to make sure I've got a good chance of recovery. I want to do the best I can for myself with what little knowledge and experience I've got. And you have to carry on looking. I mean, YouTube's wonderful, but it's also full of people who've got, again, lots of answers, but not enough questions. So that's why you've got to ask the questions yourself. You've got to experiment yourself. You got to do things yourself to try and generate, the clarity and the positivity and the solutions you need in your life path. All right, repeatedly doing the same thing, expecting different results isn't always a good thing, but sometimes one could argue that it is. All right, because you're practicing, because you're learning, because you need to make the mistakes on the way. I personally regard science and engineering and medicine as being very slow animals. Okay, it's very slow animals. Once upon a time, the church had the authority over what was true, and that's why that guy who did the swan neck flask thing, what's his name, Pasteur, had to prove it to the Vatican in order for it to be accepted. When it was probably quite obvious to him, actually, that that's a good way of keeping the broth clean and sterile, is to have that swan neck thing going on it, which is now basically the same thing that winemakers use with their fermentation traps, because it helps the carbon dioxide go out but doesn't allow any germs to come in. It's basically Pasteur. So we have to thank the Vatican for allowing us to learn how to make wine. And then after the church had all the authority, it's now in the hands of the scientists and the engineers. But both scientists and engineers are fighting each other for supremacy and dominance, because they're basically two different churches fighting each other for who is right and who is wrong about various different things. But what they're forgetting is that, there's people out there who are experiencing things. Why don't they talk to us? And that's maybe one of the reasons why the double-blind controlled trial is kind of like losing some of its gold standard, because citizen science is slowly becoming a way of looking at reality and putting things to the test. So, it's interesting to see how this dynamic has worked from the church to the scientists and the engineers. And now it's kind of like blending a little bit more towards the people and the scientists and the engineers, the people here, the scientists and the engineers there, and therefore they're trying to listen a little to us. But the problem with the sciences is that being a scientist is being in a very competitive field. And so therefore you're going to spend all your time fighting for your career and fighting for your survival, and not necessarily fighting for the truth and trying to work out what the objective truth really is. So free market capitalism is kind of like taking the sciences and buggering it. Yeah, funding is an issue as well, without the shadow of a doubt. Hey, no worries, Joe. Any other questions or subjects of conversation you want to bring up for me? I've been online now for 2 hours and 15 minutes on this one particular broadcast. I can stay on for a bit longer. I think of it like how many fish are being caught, pulled out of the ocean onto a boat by humans. Went back and told the other fish, and no one believes them. Paranormal. Yeah. It's just like it is somehow strangely like that, because the things which I experienced, like the ghost experience I had at the age 4, most people haven't had that, so therefore they don't believe it's real. Right? I haven't been to Australia. Doesn't mean to say I don't believe it's real. I've seen pictures of it. Okay, but if I hadn't seen pictures of it, could I actually believe that there was a place where there were people who spoke English on the other side of the planet? If I hadn't, had more awareness of Australia as a concept. I mean, maybe Australia doesn't exist for all I know, and it's just been a whopping great hoax designed to confuse us. Of course, that would be rubbish to think like that, wouldn't it? But then, on the other hand, let's say no one else in Britain believes in Australia, and I end up by some like strange happenstance ending up there, and I meet all these weird people who are speaking English on the other side of the planet. I then go back to England and tell them, "Look what I've seen! It's real." They'd say I'm full of rubbish. Yeah, we're talking about rare experiences which are difficult and hard to accomplish, and you have to do a lot of change and growth in order to try and make it happen. Is trickery, stroke psychology, and medicine a form of magic? Depends what you mean by magic, then, doesn't it? We got to be in a position of defining terms here. Uh, if you think about Crowley's interpretation of change and conformity with the will, then pouring myself a drink is a work of magic. I mean, magic is to be and to do, he said. But essentially, psychology is psychology, which could overlap with psychological things and therefore psychological experiences, which therefore could overlap with meditation and contemplation and introspection. So I think we'd probably keep it more or less in that kind of box rather than moving it onto the world of spirituality. But I mean, practical spirituality in terms of like energy fields and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But if it works, if it's useful and good for people, then it should be useful and good for people, and that's it. Have you experienced any strange stuff with subsonic audio frequencies? I have not experimented in that way before. All right, but I've used shamanic trance thingy bobs, and I've had some very good visualizations and trips with that. That was quite good fun. Tina says, I had spiritual experiences. I know that there is another reality. I don't understand it, but it's real. Yeah, that's putting it simply. All right, but all the people who say they do understand it might be missing out on a trick, mightn't they? Because they might not fully or appropriately understand it. And to the most part, they'll be so heavily dominated by their weird religiosity that they won't be able to, provide the ingredients for the recipe. What is the colloquial definition by your perspective? I would say, in my opinion, we would have to separate the kind of like, as it were, science and art of living and life and prosperity from the, as it were, science and art or art form associated with consciousness-based phenomena. And so for consciousness-based phenomena, I would include spiritual healing. I would include laying on of hands. I would include that type of prayerful type action as being a form of magic. Okay, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and spiritualism, forms of magic. I would say remote viewing, a form of magic. Astral projection, definitely a form of magic. And also things done within ritual for the purposes of attempting to do something weird, based upon energy theories, would be magic. Radionics would be magic. Homeopathy would overlap with magic, but that's more to do with a different principle. Where do I put placebo? Well, if I was to wear an amulet to help me make my workout better, and I did a workout and it was better whilst I was wearing my amulet, that could easily be placebo, couldn't it? I know that there was a culture of people a while ago who would literally buy placebo pills and they would take one every single day. And some of them got things like relief from their digestive system problems. Not necessarily a cure, but relief. So placebo has a powerful effect. But sometimes you can put things to the test and you can realize you're not reacting based upon placebo because it can happen no other way. It's not damn placebo. Yes, rings with blessed gems is the go-to accessory over here. Yeah. But on the other hand, if referring back to what was discussed earlier on, can objects be imbued with consciousness? And if so, how could that consciousness or that message or that programming affect the individual energetically speaking? Within Spooky 2's culture, there are people who do frequency imprinting of holographic stickers. And then put them like on the inside of their shoe or on the inside of their belt to carry that frequency with them. So is it possible that some objects are more sensitive to spiritual energy than other objects, or indeed frequency energy, or maybe everything is basically frequency energy, and when we're praying over something, are we in fact putting a message in the form of a complex frequency signature in that thing? Questions, questions, questions. That's all we got now. The intention is, yeah, I think intention has a real importance, but I would have thought that there would have to be a certain strength of power behind it to make it operate. So it's not just a question of like muttering a few special words or else drawing a symbol. It's a question of having that, deep inside you that this is genuinely what the symbol means. This is genuinely what it's really all about in that special meditative state, and hopefully reaching the height of spiritual ecstasy when you're doing it. As a wild guess. But again, there is no hard and fast science of specifically how to get the right quantity of energy delivered in the right way to the specific thing, and the thing itself has got to be perfect for the thing which you're trying to do, and so on and so forth. There's moving parts to it. It's like moving house or trying to get yourself sorted out on holiday and do your packing and buying your tickets. There's lots of moving parts going on. Where does the technology boom fit into this magic spectrum? Well, firstly, the technology boom has allowed people to have more access to ideas. Okay, and I think that there is probably a bit of a general spread, an increase in different varieties of either magical thinking or religious and witchcraft thinking, which is kind of like spreading throughout the world. As far as could like an intention, a spell, or whatever you want to call it, be transmitted via television or the internet? Very hard to say, but essentially there is something to be said about images and how images created with intention seem to have some kind of energetic effect, and there is some strong beliefs about that. So maybe there is some kind of spirituality which is flowing from symbols being transmitted, which people can then read or see or have some kind of thing to do with it. Is there an eventual marriage between the two? Many centuries in the future, on the basis that humanity still exists, quite possibly. But it also depends upon who's in power. It depends upon who the scientists are, who the artists are, who the politicians are, what their thoughts are, what they're open to, and how they are going to react to public opinion. And there's so much public opinion which is being twisted by the Murdoch press, for instance, that we don't know. I mean, essentially, the Murdoch press probably controls much more of human cognition and perception than anything else in the whole wide world. It's a frightening monster. One day, incredible power. Another, but not as intense. isn't the fact that you're speaking to us all around the world is magical. By comparison with the way the technology was 50 years ago, it's pretty impressive. But when I'm using the word, when I want to use the word magic, I want to use it in a more specific supernaturalist kind of a way. I mean, I could do a particular thing for superstitious purposes and trying to hypnotize myself that a particular thing is going to happen, and then I then adjust myself to it. That could be possibly regarded as magic, but I would regard hypnotism and suggestion and placebo as being a different thing. It's not like the, as it were, the genuine spiritual healing energy being used in a specific way for the purposes of doing something of an anomalous nature, of a spiritual and consciousness orientated nature in the real world. What if we got so used to magic we stopped seeing it as magic? I think we'll jump that fence when we get there. But it's a question of using a word to differentiate, all right, spiritual and supernatural experimentation, all right, from more mundane things. So I personally would use the word magic not to say, as Phil Hine did, pushing back the frontiers of achievable reality. I think that's a very woolly phrase. I would want to keep the word magic specifically to attempts to manipulate spiritual healing energy and to deal with the apparently supernatural world as being essentially all that it should be about. Okay. Hmm. But it, I mean, you could say that the internet is miraculous because of where we were 50 years ago. Yeah, of course it is. But it's all physical. All right. It's not the sort of like, the other dimension, the dimension of spirit, which is non physical. I mean, the whole reason for there to be a fifth suit of the tarot is because that fifth suit represents the world of faith, the world of spirituality, all right, the world of your faith-based path. Whereas all the other four suits, the wands, the staves, the coins, and the cups, that's supposed to be the four elements of material life. Namely, wands was competition in the form of sport, in the form of hockey sticks. Then swords was conflict, coins was commerce, and cups was social interaction. Okay, so that's all human experience, right? The minor arcana is all of human experience. The major arcana is much more faith-driven, and it's much more about faith. Okay, the bunny has to leave the hat at some point. Yeah, sure. Or magic has to manifest in the physical for us to perceive it. That's a way of looking at it. But the internet is run by electricity, which is magical. No, it's physical. There's no human brain which is wired into a machine, which is then providing the power, all right, in order to make the internet work. All right, everything that I'm talking about has to come from the human brain, the human body, the human nervous system, the human energy fields, the spiritual being which lives within inside us, and the hypothetical spiritual beings which live outside of us. That's what I'm talking about. The consciousness manifestation and how it operates. And therefore separating that from other stuff. I mean, there's things from the occult tradition which you can use wonderfully for faith and for prayer and for meditation and for placebo and all that kind of stuff. Fine, go for it. And also for religion and your own spirituality. Fine, go for it. All right. But there's people in this world who are dying of serious diseases. All right. There are people in this world who've got very serious mental diseases. There's people in this world who've got very troubled energy fields, shall we call it. Okay. There's people who are going through like very serious problems with their health, with their money, with their work, with their family, with their housing situation. All right. This entire world needs sodding great miracles. So why isn't it that all these people who are gathering together in their little witchcraft groups are not actually doing something proactively to stop the misery of the world? And sometimes they will turn around to you and say, well, it's about my karma. No, it's about the fact that you can't do anything. All right. And the problem is yours because you can't do anything. And you're turning around to us and you're saying you're so powerful. I hate people who are like that. I regard them as less than a dog. Yes, I do buy into collective intention having an effect. That's what the theories of Dean Radin was all about. But I also kind of accept the idea that 4 o'clock in the morning is a very good time to do any form of spell casting because everyone locally is asleep and therefore their energy fields are not going to interfere with yours. Right? The daytime is noisy. The dead of the night, when more people are kind of like preparing to sleep, the hormone of sleep is growing in their brain. They're closing themselves off for the night. Less energetic interference, fewer like radio stations around you buzzing and buzzing and buzzing and buzzing, if you know what I mean. I think that there could be some truth to that theory. But on the other hand, who the hell wants to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do a ritual when you've got to get some energy together? Who the hell has any energy together at 3 o'clock in the morning? You don't even know what direction to fart at 3 o'clock in the morning. At least I don't, but I'm 48, so. Then you must be the most feared magician if you can possibly stay up, to 3 o'clock in the morning and do like intense like prayer, meditation, chanting, and Ouija board seances. Absolutely. Because that's the problem with the world we live in. We're in a system, so to speak, and we got to carry on living in that system. Are you going to make the Joseph McCarthy? I've got the Exorcist deck. I've made it. Just very, very simply, just writing on the cards what all the things are. Yeah, I mean, I had some. I thought to myself, like, I've got this like weird emotion going on with me at the moment. It doesn't feel very comfortable. Okay, well, let's just try and treat it hypothetically as if this is some kind of demon or spiritual thing. So, what would I do? Okay, I would go up to the Hall of Elders as she described, and see if I can like get some symbol. So I actually did this visualization of going up. I actually treated it more like the northern tradition thing and going up to the Light Elf Elm. Okay, and it seemed like there was this like whopping great cathedral with a massive front door, really, really tall, thin front door. And I went into that, and I kind of like felt like I was having a conversation with things up there, and I saw a symbol. And I couldn't quite work out what it was, and I asked them to explain it to me in a different way. So I drew out the symbol on the card when I came back, and shoved it in my wallet, and somehow the negative experience kind of like left me, which is rather curious. And yeah, I did create for myself the Exorcist desk, and I created a style of spread for it, and I did this thing suggesting certain things that could possibly be going on from that deck's point of view. Obviously, I looked at it with a certain level of skepticism, because otherwise, if I don't, then I'm going to go crazy and trust the cards 100%. No one should trust the cards 100%. You need to have a brain in your head, okay? So then, I will treat some of this as if what that reading is saying has some validity. And I did this like ritual thing, and like this strange feeling left me. It came back periodically, but then it's sort of like nowhere near as badly. Am I familiar with Swedenborg? No, I'm not. I can't give you my thoughts on someone I know nothing about. Right before dawn is where God is closest, as they say. That's a very interesting phrase if you think about it. Okay. Quickly copy and paste his name into an open browser window. Or indeed the other browser window I had for Wikipedia. Actually, I'll do a Wikipedia search for him, or her, or them, or whatever they are. Swedenborg. Emanuel Swedenborg. Notable work: Arcana Coelestica and True Christian Religion, Heaven and Hell. Tradition associated with Lutheranism and the New Church. Believe that is theological. Some works were not written out in a final edited form for publication, does not make a single statement less trustworthy than the statements in any of the other works. And he also went a bit scientific. I see. How matter relates to spirit. Right, that is going to be curious. Yeah, that's a bit of interesting reading for myself. Dion Fortune was a great, in my opinion, a very good Christian witch. She was very skilled in her spiritualism, but it's taken me a long time to understand what she was properly talking about. But she mentioned one experience of having some negative emotions and then going for a walk in the park, and all of a sudden at a certain location, the negative emotion left her. And she then looked it up on a map and found there was a water pipe going across there. And she said that there was a superstition that witches could not cross water. And then she thought to herself, well, maybe there's a connection to this because it's taken the negative emotion out of me, which I could have possibly used to, send out and hurt someone. And walking across water did it. So that's why at the end of one of her books, she says about bringing back like medieval superstition, she would have to plead guilty to that charge. And I think she's actually quite a good person, and she's trying to speak as honestly as she could, take into account her position of knowledge. The tarot spreads are really interesting. Yeah, unhinged people becoming more so. I think that's the thing. Great account of scientists going very deep into the self. Take what he says with a pinch of salt. I take everything with a pinch of salt, man. That's the kind of guy I am. I am the pinch of salt guy. Okay, I may be a bit strange and have ideas that most people won't get on with, but I'm definitely the pinch of salt guy. Predicted a fire in Stockholm. This is that guy again. Within half an hour of its occurrence. Good guy. All right. Yeah, I think that the unfortunate is just a person of good spirit. I mean, she's not a shadowy occultist. She's a good Christian girl who just happens to be doing things like lesser rites of pentagram and stuff, basically a bit like what I turned into. He claims to have met creatures on other planets. Right, well, that could be the rising of the planes thing. Okay, so that's like going into meditation, going through your chakras one at a time, doing the crown chakra, hitting a prayerful state, and trying to ascend the state of mind even further and even more spiritual, like crazy. And then you're creating a gamma state of mind whereby, boom, visualizations will come because your brain is processing things so much faster, in my opinion. All right, based upon the experience. So that's not the question necessarily of actually seeing beings from other planets, is it? That's a question of having visions brought about by entering into an altered state of consciousness. But on the other hand, yes and no kind of thing. There's these things overlap. Yeah, everyone has something to sell. Yeah, well, we're humans. That's what we do. His first experience with the demonic figure is interesting. Might be worthwhile having a look at. Do you mean which book by Dion Fortune? I don't know. Joseph McCarthy's books are well written, but give me a bad feeling. Again, too much to take in. It's a belief system. Yeah, well, that's the point, right? Every single human being has only got two eyes and one brain to try and understand the whole world, right? Even including myself, all right, including yourselves. And this is why humans are such an unreliable source sometimes, because although we may be perceiving something which is true and accurate and the rest of that, what we aren't doing necessarily is being able to explain properly in an objective manner what's really going on, because we don't fully understand it ourselves. All right, just like the early mariners who went out in the sea and they saw like a whale or a giant squid, and then hey presto, there were stories about sea monsters, because they had an emotional reaction. If you have been sailing if you've ever done sailing, proper sailing, all right, you'll know it's an exhausting experience, and you're physically and mentally drained by the end of it. And and you have to force yourself to stay awake. And you can go into a trance-like state and see weird things that way as well. And and also you can go quite mad if you have extreme emotions in that state of intense fatigue, and therefore extreme reactions associated with seeing, let's say, an octopus could suddenly turn into their mind into being a whopping great sea monster. So maybe Josephine McCarthy is being a bit like that. Maybe she's seeing monsters where there aren't monsters. Maybe we all are to a certain extent. It's part of the human condition to blow things up out of proportion, to have a massive magnifying mind, as some people call it, when we blow up things or ideas or thoughts or feelings based upon our trauma or our fears or whatever. And all of a sudden, or our obsessions, and it becomes something more real than it actually is, or bigger than it actually is, or more scary than it actually is. Just like all these fundamentalist Christians who are trying to terrify you away from the Ouija board and tarot cards because they're so evil. I mean, oh, come on. Yeah, isolation on the ocean can be a big issue. Yeah, people projecting things onto stuff. I mean, no one knows things, right? we don't know things. We have a number of experiences. We have our education, but our education has only told us what people used to think. It's like a dictionary. Is a dictionary telling us the way that people are using words today? Or are they telling us the way that words used to be used? And then all of a sudden, this authoritative book says this is the definition of the English language. All right, science that we study in school is science, sure. But science that we study in school is what used to be, not what's going to be, not what is at the moment, not what people are experiencing in their homes at the moment when people have a haunting, or people have like an astral projection, or people have prophetic dreams of the future, which, these things happened to me. These things actually happened. So, and if it actually happens, it's not supernatural or paranormal. Well, yes, it is, obviously, but it's natural. If something happens, it has to be happening in nature in accordance with the laws of nature. That includes telepathy, precognition, clairsentience, everything, just everything. It has to be happening in accordance with the laws of nature. But the question is, what are those laws of nature? And how can we kind of like integrate with nature in that way and experience things in that way? How can we go through the process of becoming something which is appropriate? And how shall I put this? And is capable of experimenting with nature and finding out what's actually happening in the world. I mean, how can we improve ourselves? How can we improve our ways of doing things? But especially, it boils down to language. And it boils down to the quality of explanation that people give. And it doesn't boil down to having to believe what someone else believes. Well, yeah, I mean, observance of past knowledge. Yeah, I mean, there is a rationale for the process of discussion and debate based upon accepted science or accepted facts. There is a rationale for that, but like winning an argument, winning in a debate, does not mean to say that it's the truth. I mean, you can be a great debater, but every conclusion that everyone ends up voting for on your behalf could in fact be complete hooey. Because debate and discussion lacks. But what doesn't lack, in my opinion, is dedication and experimentation at home. And that's been my, one of the main thrusts of me doing this channel, is to try and get more people to both be skeptical and self-critical, and critical of what they're experiencing as well as what they're reading, but still doing the experimentation. Which for some humans is a bit of I can't understand that. I don't know what he's talking about. Because they would rather, people need like spiritual safety. They want to be within their Wiccan coven. They want to be within their chaos magic group. They want to be, They want to be within their church, where there's a certain fixed understanding, and therefore it's a little bit easier for them. But these things, chaos magic has basically become a bit of a religion in its own right. There isn't really much more advanced stuff there, from what I can tell. And they certainly don't communicate about this subject the way that I do, and they don't think about this subject the way that I do. So either that means that I'm a different voice, all right, in the whole debate about how we should approach these things and what we should be doing. But I don't think it's important to sell new religions. I don't think that if the pagan religion suddenly took over, that everyone would be nice to the environment. I don't think so. It'd still be full of humans. And humans are aggressive, little defensive, frightened little animals who are just trying to survive and do one up over people. Humans are stupid. I mean, if it was true that Christianity was a really, really good thing, then why would things be quite so complicated within the church? Why would there be Catholics who are fiddling little kids? Why would the church have so many issues with homosexuality, and not to do things like to hold truth to power and attack the government, which should essentially be their job? The whole thing about Jesus turning over tables in the temple. I mean, that was a very interesting message, if you get my drift. Yeah, and humans like to be tribal. That's sad, really. But we've got Windows technology, computers. We've got things in our pocket that we can use to access nearly all the knowledge in the whole wide world. The fact that we can video call. I mean, when my mother was in hospital, I video called her. I actually sat there and I had a face-to-face conversation with her, being a few miles away, because I was on my phone. We can have all of that. But yet we are very, very slow, stupid, fearful, troublesome, troubled little animals. And that's part of the political reality of humans. All right? Less about discovery, that's right. Less about questioning, but more about having a place to belong and a comfortable framework of reality. Yeah. I mean, when I joined the Unitarian Church, I mean, a lot of that sense of comfort was taken away from me, because we're free. We're free to believe as we see fit. We don't have anyone telling us what to think. Okay, so that's curious. I mean, it's a bit like the pagan movement, but the pagan movement has become dogmatically against Christianity, or without allowing a breadth of interpretation. There are people who just reject, rather than thinking, well, hang on a second, let's try and take the good things from this and reject the stuff that is actually harmful. There isn't that much of that around. Well, I don't like churches. So what? I think they're quite beautiful buildings. Someone's actually had to plan them, design them, sculpt them. All right? It's a work of art in its own right, and that has some kind of importance. So what? Same with mosques. Same with synagogues. And same with a lot of New Age pagan art. I mean, I follow a lot of pagan groups on Facebook, and I love the artwork. The image of the horn god and the rest of that, and this, that, and the other, and some of the poetic stuff. I mean, you take what you can from it. Yeah, I know. It is finding out about the world, and especially since the Brexit referendum thing. I mean, everything on the run up to it, everything went screwy, and after that, everything went screwy, and things are still screwy. I kind of treat the news like a horror movie and watch it between my fingers. You know what I mean? I have to filter out some of the nastiness of the world, because otherwise, how am I supposed to be able to be a functioning, contributing member of society if I'm all being screwed up by all of the worry about the power cuts in the winter? I mean, that really frightened me on the run up to the last winter just gone. And all the talk about 7-day power cuts coming, it's going to be terrible. I thought, oh, shit. That really freaked me out. And I ended up spending a lot of money, which I couldn't afford to spend, on paraffin equipment, because I was terrified of freezing to death. But on the other hand, I didn't need it in the end. We didn't have a power cut, apart from a short one lasting about 20 minutes or something stupid. The news can frighten you, and it's very, very weird how much information there is out there, which is actually frightening. But of course, the thing to do is to not. I mean, I think the people who read like some particular tabloid newspapers are actually thrill seekers. They actually get turned on by the anxiety and the fear and the worry, and it's just like part of their psychology. They enjoy the adrenaline rush of reading something saying that potatoes can give you cancer, or that stupid shit. Really, really stupid shit. Well, TV is something you learn. TV is something you learn to use for your benefit in your way to give you what you require, and you turn it into your servant, and you become its master, and you learn how to be really critical of what's on it. And I became very sort of like artistically critical of some of the horror movies I watch. Maybe one day I'll even write a horror movie. I don't know. That'll be a long time in the future when like life is different. Life is different for me personally. Yeah, but it was on the run up to the Brexit referendum that the tabloid media suddenly went bizarre with like tons and tons and tons of fear of migrants. And after the referendum, it stopped and migration increased tremendously. But there's no more talk about it in the popular press, because essentially the Murdochs, they wanted to make Britain Brexit so that they could then make more money from this country. And that's what's happened. And that's what's been done. And now, we've got mortgage prices going up through the roof. We've got the cost of food going up through the roof, cost of utilities going up through the roof, salaries stagnating. So I think even like, well-adjusted upper middle class people are going to start eating like a first-year undergraduate without any help from their parents, that kind of situation. I think that's actually going to happen. Tesco value baked beans will come back. It's got to. Somehow. There's got to be some kind of change to the current situation, because like everything is so stupid in Britain. I mean, I've got this friend of mine who's I've been chatting to online since the 90s, literally the 90s. And she says that, if Europe is like America, then England is Texas. England has the extreme views. England has extreme stupidity. England's the one who's got like the poor education and the stupid attitudes. And that's right. We are. Britain has turned itself into a rogue state that's run by conspiracy theorists. Almost. Okay, we're not quite there yet, but we're a few steps away from that. And then that is terrifying. What England has actually done to itself as a result of choosing to vote to leave Europe, which was the most enlightened political invention ever. All right, the single most enlightened political invention ever. And now this country is going to have many more people coming from abroad with skin tones that won't be appealing to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant conservative bastards. Okay, it's just, oh God. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Water, filter, stock, rice and beans, etc. Well, I don't think anyone can afford to be a prepper anyway. Because the people who are preppers and can afford to be preppers can afford to pay out everything that they can on a day-to-day basis for their utilities and all their food and everything else, and have extra money which they can use to put aside for other things, such as storing with beans and rice and all the rest of it, and putting in solar panels and buying generators and all this kind of crazy stuff. And who can what's normal person who has to pay their tax bill, all right, can actually afford to spend that kind of money, especially now with everything being more pricey. You go out to do anything you used to do like 5 years ago, and it's like way more expensive. Your food shopping, your this, that, and the other, everything is up, but your income isn't. Right? And you've still got the same tax bills to pay. England is stupid. It shouldn't be. And there are lots of very intelligent, very educated people in Britain. But some of them had their minds twisted. But hopefully we'll get a change in government, and other things which have been illegal in this country for a while will steadily become legalized. You know what I mean? And hopefully we'll just pull this country out of the mire, and people will start to realize what a bunch of wallies they've actually been. Yeah, it's the world has gone south. The whole world has gone south. And Britain has chosen to demonstrate precisely how to do it. Absolutely. You screw everything up, you bugger off, and you think you're going it alone, and you spend all your time building economic relationships and trading partnerships with rogue nations when essentially you had access to the world's biggest market ever under any circumstances as a result of being part of the European Union. So what on earth have they been playing at? I think moderate prepping is a good idea. If it doesn't happen, you've just got an abundance of food and storage. Yeah. I mean, I bought a box of food from Ready Wise just in case I got skint and I just needed something to, just dip into at some point. But that's just one box. What I would need to do is spend thousands, which I don't have, to buy lots of it, and I would store it in the loft somewhere where no one can find it. But what will probably happen is it'll still be up there in 15 years' time if I choose to move house, and I'll have to find some other way of dealing with it. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I mean, there is weird things happening in this world. What's it? Vladimir Putin threatening us with nuclear attacks and all sorts of things. There's an awful lot of us crazy in this world. I mean, some people would think that I'm crazy. Fine, let them. But I'm trying my best to be as truthful and honest about what I think is right as I can, and I think that's more or less all we can do as little primitive little monkeys. And that's what we are. That's one of the reasons why our society and our humanity is the way it is, because humans think we're amazing, but we're not. We're not. We're just another type of monkey that got lucky. It's what people say about their pets. They say things like, oh, they're so human, aren't they? They're so human, aren't they? No, it's that you're very mammalian. All right, you're a mammal. They're a mammal. They've got the same kind of emotions that you've got, just interpreted differently because of the culture of the type of creature that they are. And that's why your cat or your dog will react to your emotions, because they've got them too. They may have physically smaller brains than you. Doesn't mean to say they're not working you out. In my cat's young days, all right, he was spending a lot of his time. You could see it in his face, in his eyes, as he tried to put me to the test. Okay. It's been nearly 3 hours that I've been here. I've really got to get some rest now, and I feel blessed and full of gratitude that I've had some companionship tonight, and I hope I've created some good entertainment and some good information for anyone who's decided to watch this live stream on YouTube when it sort of goes out and as a video, an actual video and stuff. Yeah, we take our amazing qualities for granted and prefer instead to imagine that we are gods. Yeah, human is like mental. I actually had a client once whose father was a psychiatrist, and apparently this father said 98% of the world is insane, the other 2% are getting there. I don't know whether he considered himself to be of one part or the other. I don't know. Speak to you in a while. Look after yourself. Chill out. Good fortune. God bless. Oh, hello, Gabriel. Unfortunately, just come at the very end of the show. I'm knackered now, but watch the whole thing when it becomes a video on YouTube. So that's a bit of a bug of that. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, Sylvan Muldoon and Harewood Carrington, the projection of the astral body, really important. Barbara Ann Brennan, books on spiritual healing, also really important. Okay, anything from Dion Fortune is pretty awesome anyway. The reference section of the projection of the astral body by Muldoon and Carrington will keep you going back to your local lending library and asking them weird questions about the weird books they've got for a long time. All right, bye for now. Sleep well.